Good evening, Internet, and it's time for this week's Midweek Geek with me, the old geek, and my opening panel tonight. I don't know if anyone else is going to be joining us at any point, but at the moment, in order of arrival, we have Mage's Music. The old geek and my opening panel. There's me in the background. That's you, Mage,
Sorry.
I think.
Yep. Muted,
Say
don't worry.
Say hello to everyone, Mage.
Hello, everyone.
And next to Mage over there, we have Saxius.
Hello.
Then we've got Elfbait.
Hey, folks.
And we, Gingerbeard, you're smaller and you've cut your beard.
True.
Right, Doof. That's Doof. Right. Okay. So we do have a little, a little mess around before we actually get into the topic. Just talking about games we're playing and running and being part of, just for a minute or two before we start. Since last week's stream, I ran Call of Cthulhu on Thursday. We had a few players missing for various reasons. So we just played a very role-play heavy couple of hours of investigation. And yeah, they've progressed. They've progressed things a little. My weekend, all my weekend stuff was called off because of the expo, and my Monday one was called off because a few players were missing, and I didn't have time to prepare anything to cover the DM. Because I cover him when he's not available, when the player's missing. I step in and do something else. I didn't have time to prepare anything because I had to go to work on Monday because I'd been at the expo over the weekend. So we didn't meet on Monday night. So there we go. Anyway, Saxius, any playing?
Yeah, so I ran my second edition game.
I just realised I've jumped past Mage. I'll come back to Mage in a minute.
It's okay. We're all friends here.
Yeah, so I did the second edition game. There was about 180, almost 200 tokens, NPC tokens, that I had to simulate a combat of, while the players were sitting in the corner of the map just going like, oh, lovely. We get to watch the carnage. True to myself, I, of course, made a spreadsheet to automate this entire thing. So about 20 attacks per turn that I could quickly just go down. Did they hit these ones? Did they hit these ones? What was the average damage done? How many of them would die? Just take the tokens out, do a quick cinematic one. Next turn. So what should have taken possibly like 8 to maybe 10 hours if you actually sat and rolled out everything, I got that done in 3 hours. So we had Kuotoa, Bullywugs, and Drow all clashing at the centerpiece, resulting in just an absolute carnal house. The Kuotoas took no prisoners. They came armed to the nines with evolutionary horrors from the depths of the dark and the underworld. The Bullywugs came marching in frog step, about 100 of them. Yeah, 100 of them. They came prepared to basically raise the dead, but because their lines crumbled, because they split themselves to face both the Kuotoa and the Drow at the same time, they lost numbers quicker than a hobbit could eat a breakfast. So yeah, it got serious, and I posted some pictures in Geek's Discord about that. That was the very crescendo with the Drow not taking a lot of actual casualties, but they did walk into a Myconid territory who proceeded to just bombard them with spores so they would fall asleep. So there's a lot of paralyzed Drow in that area that are currently sort of being thrown out the way as the other Drow are trying to rush in, while the mages are thinking like, what is going on? We don't have time for this. Just throw a couple of lightning bolts down there. That should get rid of them.
I feel like in the fight between Bullywugs, Kuotoa, and Drow, the Bullywugs are a serious disadvantage.
Well, yes. they basically, a long story cut short, the Bullywugs were rising up in the world above, and the problem with Bullywugs in my world is that if they gain momentum, they acquire food. If they acquire food, the momentum grows even bigger because their tadpoles exponentially grows. It's a snowball effect, so you have to stop them early.
So,
Otherwise,
plague of frogs.
It's a plague of frogs, exactly. Locust frog, yeah. So they did, charm monsters and all these things to like basically lure the tribes underground to do a quick culling of them. But it also helped them like just take out pieces of either side. And then ended with the Kuo-Toas and the Drow meeting head on head, with the Kuo-Toa champion, which is a level 10 fighter, armed with gauntlets of ogre strength, a cutlass with a +3 bonus, a +1 dagger, field plate that's a +3, and an amulet of protection, and just went charging into the Drow ranks with haste cast upon him. It got brutal at the end of the entire thing.
I bet. I'm going to go back to Mage. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, this just sounds crazy nuts. Like a big old fight.
Did you have more there, Oscar?
I do, but I will leave that for Eli to go over, because I think that's...
I see. He's part of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, my gaming, I had a bunch of games in the past weekend, and all, interestingly enough, have an alignment-based forefront theme there, where alignment came into factor. Our OSE game had a situation where the lawful cleric of Alona was traveling with everybody else was neutral. And they encountered the hobgoblin tribes in the Caves of Chaos and proceeded to slaughter a room full of the women and children. And so naturally, the lawful cleric, he took exception. He was like, wait a sec. Well, okay, the men and the women are threats, but the children, and the children were cowering in the corner. And then they brutally beat two of the children and left the one to lead them to the prisoners they were there to rescue. The prisoners that were going to be eaten by the hobgoblins, which was the point the neutrals were making. Is like, these aren't friendly little kids. These are going to grow into hobgoblins who eat our kind and our children. So the back and forth debates were happening. It was great. And when they got to the room with the prisoners, they went to rescue them, and of course one of the players immediately killed the last remaining child, and the lawful cleric of Alona flipped out. He was like, and this is in character, by the way, not necessarily the player at the table, but and he's like, that's it, I am never traveling with you people again. You're worse than the monsters we're here to stop. So some wonderful little alignment play there. I want to see if he holds to that the next time the groups gather, if he singles out the characters who are with him on that quest and says, no, I am not traveling with you. Right. And then, so that'll be fun to resolve. The next day, in a game that I'm playing my niece's fiance runs it. I'm playing a lawful halfling, and we come across a wanted fugitive who is saying that he wants our help capturing some other worse bandits so that he can earn a pardon. And and the other group is like, yeah, we'll help you. And I'm like, no, we won't. He can come with us. He can turn himself in. We can help him. We can vouch for him, but we're not going to go gallivanting over a known fugitive. Could be a trap. Could be any number of things. And the one other character leans over to me and she's like, oh, don't worry, we'll just slit his throat later. And I'm like, no, you people are awful. So a very similar situation where immoral acts are being proposed. So it was a lot of fun. The players in that game were looking at me like I was an alien. It's like, what are you doing? What are you, some like sort of goody good?
Yes.
Yeah, lawful character. And Sunday was my AD&D group with Team Good. And they come across this cabin where the hunter lives. Now, the hunter, they don't know this, but the hunter's like an uber warrior, 10th, 12th level fighter, could single-handedly TPK this group.
They might know now.
In armed combat. But remember, this is Team Good. They're led by a paladin. They have a lawful good monk. Even the thief is of good alignment. There's nobody. They're all good alignment. And so they see this cottage and they're looking, and they're like, is the door open? Yeah. And I peek in, right? And I describe. You see these trophies and everything going on, and then the one guy, the chaotic priest, is like, well, let's wait here by the fire because it's winter until he comes back, and then we'll talk to the owner. And the paladin is like, nope, this is his home. We have no right to enter. Let's just wait over here, and when whoever owns this place comes back, we'll ask him for information. So they do that. And the situation I was using was one of those index card deck of encounters cards. And there's a specific stipulation. If the hunter finds anybody in his home, he attacks without quarter. But they were outside of the home, and the paladin led the conversation with the massive charisma bonus they get, turned a hostile encounter into a friendly one, all by honoring their alignment and playing smart. and talking. So it was an interesting alignment-based series of games.
Pleasantly old school in that sense as well.
It is, yeah. Well, two were OSE, and the third one with the Paladin was AD&D, first edition. So,
Elfbait.
Actually, I have a couple of things to report. So Sunday was after my stream. I was in Saxius's game as a player. That was fun. We continued our assault on the captured lighthouse. The only damage my fighter took in the entire session was self-inflicted when he tried to jump from an overpass to get down to where the fighting was, because I'm pretty much purely melee except for a thrown dagger. And so I'm like, asked Oscar, I'm like, hey, how high up is this overpass over the courtyard? He's like, well, it's about 10 feet. I'm like, can I try to do an athletics or acrobatics check to avoid jumping or avoid injuring myself when I jump down there? Or actually, I asked if I could jump down there, and he said, okay, go ahead and make the anyways, I failed. Inflicted falling damage to myself, and then limped into the rest of the battle. That was after I got thwarted by the rope bridge. The rest of the party had already gone down and was in the courtyard, but to get there was a serious backtrack. And then, so I'm like, okay, maybe I'll be able to continue north. And I go north, and there's an old broken bridge there with just an old ship's net stretched across it. And I'm like, nope, not going to try and teeter my way across that. But we managed to dispatch the pirates. Went down underneath the lighthouse, found there was a downstairs there, and horrible flesh sheet phantom thingies descended upon us while a silent spell was in effect. So that was fun. Managed to get the silent spell dealt with and slapping things around, trying to cut these things into ribbons. But we survived. Oh yeah, and also the merfolk backing us up from the river that went between the two parts of the tower, devouring or cutting apart the pirates that fell in the water, and eventually holding up the makeshift walkways that we're crossing. It was kind of fun. It was a lot of fun, I should say. But that was interesting because I'm like, our group had, I think, the only real effective ranged attacks for the entire party of 4 is like the Warlock's Eldritch Blast. Everybody else is melee, and or whatever other spells. And then on Monday, I got to actually run my own game. My group finally got back together, but I was super tired, so it was pretty short session. In that session, they managed to recover from having practically been killed by a couple of slithering trackers. They went to go ahead and report the fact that they got attacked, only to get attacked again by a couple other assassins that were waiting for them in the Great Hall of the queen that they were with. Described as they're walking through the hall, they see all the monster trophies that are kind of up along the walls, and I'm like, you notice that some of those monster faces that are leering down seem to be moving along with you as you move through the hall, and then these 2 dragon men jump down on them and beat them up. That was fun. But yeah, so it was only about an hour and a half of play. We got started late, and then I was fading. So
Doof, how's you been playing and running any games recently? You're muted.
I haven't gotten into playing any games, but I am running a grand AD&D campaign with 3 groups playing at the same time in the same world, and they're just city crawling, dungeon crawling, doing some mass combats, the good stuff. They have recently been interacting with the factions. Saxius helped me set up with the Worlds Without Numbers, which is really nice. That is paying off right now, which is great.
Is it first edition or second edition AD&D, or
first edition?
First edition. Are you playing by the book, or are you sort of simplifying all the little oddities that first edition has?
By the book. I'm trying my best.
Is it going okay?
Oh yeah, there haven't been any problems this far.
Good stuff. Good stuff. It's good. That pleases my heart to hear that. That sort of thing. And I know Sean's a fan of trying to run AD&D pretty much as intended.
Oh, I have house rules. I have a
used
12-page document of house rules, but I
fair
do
enough.
try. I do try to derive things by the books. Like even all my house rules, you can trace back to something that's in the book. It's just clean things up or port easier rules from another system. You know what I mean?
That's super cool. Have you checked out
It is
Blue?
advanced D&D.
Have you checked out Blue Bart's blog?
I have not.
He does the same thing. He runs AD&D by the book and has a lot of interesting blog posts.
I'll bookmark it here and check it later. Blue Bard's blog. Try saying that 5 times fast.
Yes. Blah, 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 blah. Sounds like one of Saxius's fights with all the Kuato and Bullywugs.
God, that would be a lot of goldfish noises and ribbiting. But
Yes.
And you can croak.
Right, just gonna say hello to everyone in chat. We've got Slan lurking in chat, and Squirrel Hermit, hello Squirrel Hermit, and General Nut, Omen Owl from the Hilt, Ian McDonald, Wayne's World of Science and Technology, Ben the Bear the Gen X GM.
Ben the Bear.
Ben the Bear.
Coming to Disney on
Bear the Gen X GM. Brian and anybody else chimed in who's not here? No? Okay, right. Good to see you all. Right, tonight's topic. I asked Saxius a few weeks ago for some sort of. I suggested a few sort of controversial ones to keep the numbers engaged, things that might get hello RW Bishop, that people might sort of feel somewhat strongly about from time to time. And tonight's topic, crafty sort of tips and tricks that a DM has at their disposal to generally do one over a little bit on the player characters, and we have specified in our little chat beforehand, it isn't doing one over on the players. There's a big difference. It's doing one over on the player characters, and there's a lot of sort of things we can do that are codified in the rules. Even I mean, the game is meant to be a challenge. The monsters make it a challenge. The environment makes it a challenge. And in places, the rules of whatever game you're playing makes it a challenge. And there are rules at your disposal and adaptations of those rules at your disposal that can really make that challenge a little more challenging. But there's also a few reasons why we do certain things. I mean, there are times when your campaign can get a little bit out of hand. So you have to find ways to make the players' PCs part with their cash occasionally, or give them new challenges, such as breaking out of a dungeon without all their stuff because they've been kidnapped and imprisoned and all that sort of thing. So I'm just looking for little techniques you might use, little tricks you might use, and sort of where some people in sort of modern circles might refer to you as being a little bit of a dick because of the way people tend to look nowadays. I'm going to start, and right from the get-go, playing basic D&D back in 1983, you open up that lovely red box Mensa basic book, one of the first books I ever had. And one of the first things you come to is this choose your own adventure where you're going through a dungeon. And you have this pre-rolled fighter and you meet Alina, the cleric, and she gets killed by Bargle. But along the way, you have a good chance of encountering an immediate dungeon master dick move a rust monster. It's one of the first monsters you ever encountered in basic D&D. And to me, that set the tone that if you go into a dungeon underprepared, you can lose your stuff very easily because things can happen that can cause it to melt. Green slime, rust monsters, grey oozes, all these things were there in early D&D right from the very start that destroyed your stuff. And all through basic and AD&D, they still destroyed all your stuff. And now when you look at... I looked in the 5th edition Monster Manual at the equivalents. And nowadays, previously a rust monster, if it touched a magic item, it had a 10% chance of surviving the touch per plus. So even a +5 Holy Avenger had a 50% chance of being turned to a pile of dust by a rust monster. They were an absolute paladin's nightmare. But you look in 5th edition, they can't handle... So rust monsters can't corrode magic items. And even non-magic items, the player has to pass a DC 11 saving throw to avoid the effects. And the effects, even then, are loss of 1 AC from the armor, for example. It's not the instant nerfing that there was before. So things have been put in place to not have PCs parted from their stuff nowadays. Whereas back when most of us began, I know Doof and Saxius are somewhat younger. Back when we began, you had to have...
Par for the course.
It was part of the course. There's a reason why a fighter will go into a dungeon with a couple of spare weapons. It wasn't just to make sure they got a mace to hit things that edge weapons aren't great against, or a dagger
I'm sorry.
Or a dagger to sneak past guards, so when you can't have a sword out in the street, that sort of thing. Yes, there was that reason, but you had to be prepared. You had to have a backup plan a lot of the time, and I think that's a real shame.
Yeah, I was going to say it's also why they were very particular about what every monstrous humanoid was wearing and wielding, armor and weapon-wise too, because you might need to pick up that crusty scimitar off that goblin, or the shield off that skeleton. I mean, the flip side of that is AD&D used to give out a lot more magic items than the new games are designed to do so, but really, if you lost your magic sword, you were literally one adventure away from finding another one in most cases. So
yeah, you can easily adjust 5th edition for that.
Oh yeah,
but there is a mindset that you don't take a player's armor and weapons away from them. How many spells do we see in 5th edition where it's like you can manipulate an object, but not if it's being held or worn, meaning you can't affect what the players are wielding and wearing?
Yeah.
And to me, that's a real shame. It really is a shame.
Yeah, I mean, without, don't want to necessarily dive into like 5e bashing. It seems like there is a part of 5e early on where they were still trying to adhere to some of that older stuff, like some of the earlier spells, like heat metal. That can be used on somebody who's wielding or wearing something, and it's horrible.
Well, that's its purpose. That is that spell.
I know, but it's like the mentality was still there, but later on they kind of just sort of slipped away from that. But
heat metal was arguably one of the ones that was boosted in 5th edition rather than nerfed. One of the rare ones.
Yeah,
because it's controlled and you get it instantly, whereas in older school you had to wait till it revved up. Person had time to get out of their armor. Mind you, that's all they could do. It still incapacitated them, but
it's horrible too, because like under 5e rules, like if you're in a suit of plate and it's been heated with heat metal, you're going to spend 3 turns burning before you can get that suit of plate off.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So my argument there is straight away you had there was in the first book that a lot of players read that explicit permission to a DM to say use the monsters however you want. There are monsters out there that can do this. Players need to be prepared for it. If they're not prepared, it's their own stupid fault.
Player accountability. Heavens
Yes.
forbid.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. But that really comes into the way the older games are played in terms of that sense.
I mean,
So
in AD&D, I mean, even going to the core part of it, I mean, AD&D has pretty well established rules for items, saves, and everything. So it's assumed within the core of the game that your stuff is in jeopardy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Spell effects, just being on fire, acids, things like that. Your equipment has to save as much as you do. So, I mean, I remember having to make save after save after save after save after some effect.
I'm just going to say to Zaturok here, at first level in 5th edition, because of the critical effects, the swinginess of the dice, and the fact that monsters hit pretty often, and they tend to cause quite a lot of damage, you are still very fragile at first level. Yeah, you're not as fragile as you were in old school, but you are still very, very fragile. You're one bad roll away from croaking. Yeah. But once you get about level 3, it really changes. Yes, it is possible to still die, very possible, but there is a definite sense of robustness that kicks in, and it is around level 3 that this happens, where your hit point maximum for instant death starts exceeding the maximum that monsters are going to do with criticals. But at first and second level, you can be taken out in a single shot. Then you do get the death saving throws and all of that, but that's another issue. But first and second level is still pretty fragile. I start every game at first level. That's the thing, but that is a thing now. I've seen a lot of groups start at 3rd level. But I start if I start a game, whatever system I'm playing, it'll be first level if it's a campaign. So, Doof, you've been running AD&D.
Oh.
Yep. I want to know from you how you're applying the item saves rules, because this is something I do want to talk about a fair bit about. And with you being an irregular contributor on here, I want to just get your opinions on the item saves, how you approach them, how you.
I actually haven't gotten to use a lot of monsters that specifically trigger item saving throws, but that doesn't mean they have not been in play. My players, they are quite good at taking fall damage, and if you fail that save, you're gonna also item save, right?
Yep.
And I also have giants on the map that I'm looking forward to using for that specific reason.
One thing that always held me back a bit with item saves in AD&D was the specific trigger for using them. How many hit points of damage classifies as enough damage to trigger an item save? Does a hit from an ogre trigger an item save? A giant, yes, certainly. But and what degree of spell damage will cause it? Yes, a fireball. But what if you're hit by 4 magic missiles all in one go that do maximum damage? Does that trigger an item save? And it was never really made clear as to exactly when they should happen, which I think I'd like to have seen a bit better description of how to employ them.
I think it was deliberately vague because there's just too many variables.
That's true.
And so much of the older editions is left for the adjudication of the DM anyways. So, yeah, I mean, it also allows you to be narratively flexible if you wanted to. But yeah, I mean, they could have easily coded it if you take X amount of damage in a single attack, and they may very well have somewhere. I mean, I'm the guy who always quotes in Dragon magazine, blah blah blah, or in an article in Dragon. I'm sure that is there. I would not doubt it at all. Can't quote exactly, but everything is in Dragon. So
Somewhere, yeah.
It'll be buried somewhere. I mean, I will admit my last AD&D campaign, I underused item saves. I could have used them a lot more. I certainly used them in the. If anyone's familiar with the final encounter of Lost Caverns of Sojkanth, I'm hoping everyone knows the adventure because this might be a bit of a spoiler. But
it's been out for almost 50 years. You have no excuse.
If you open up if you open up the final sort of treasure at the end, you release an extra planar creature. I can't remember whether it's the Zeg-Yi or the Zag-Yar that comes out first.
Both, I think, in that adventure you encounter them both.
You can do, but,
yeah.
In all likelihood, you'll fight one of them, and then keep searching, and then set off the other one, and they explode when they die. They explode like a gas spore explodes. That sort of thing. But if they appear together, they explode in big fashion.
Yeah, because they're basically matter monsters.
And they hate each other. They'll go straight for each other. And I can't remember. I can't remember which one it was, or both of them, or what. Certainly, my party's cavalier was left in his underwear after encountering those things. His armor was obliterated. His wonderful sword was obliterated because all of his lovely shiny items just got incinerated, and he was just stood there singed. Like, imagine the cartoon when they're standing there singed. But yes, I could have certainly used them a lot more, especially in the Against the Giants series. I underused them, and I'm guilty. Hold up my hands. I'm guilty. I used them when they fell in pit traps and for big explosions like that, but I didn't do them often enough.
Yeah, I mean, there is a long and continually lengthening list of monsters that are designed purely to screw with the players and their characters. And the Rust monster is one, but we also have things like mimics, cloakers, trappers.
Yes.
God, everything else. There's too many. Animated suits of armor,
Pseudo undead,
rugs,
Pseudo undead,
killer hats.
Oh yes, the executioner's hood.
Yeah, it's everything. A shadow, just a shadow.
Yeah. And where was I going? And I mean, almost every member of the Ooze family, a traditional dungeon denizen, almost every member of the Ooze family is designed to cause lingering concern for the PCs. Yeah. And doppelgangers, of course. Doppelgangers can be employed in a very, very nasty fashion. Water weird,
the Nilbog earlier too.
Yes,
the Squirrel Hermit has been going on about the Nilbog, which is a good one. It's a classic one.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Let's just warp reality and mess with your players' heads. No saving throw, no roll.
I like the original one, where it's a magical disease. Like 5th edition, kind of, in my opinion, like over explained it, but the magical disease was always funny, because then we also in our games, folks could get infected with Nilbugism, and that was always fun. You have a PC catch Nilbugism, and then he's like, "Oh, well, great, I'm invulnerable," or are you? You also, but
I mean,
also insane now.
AB makes a decent point. I mean, I would say punishing's the right word, but certainly a way of them feeling as though they've failed in some way.
It's the consequences of their actions or inactions.
Consequences, yes.
Yeah, but it's another form of danger. Like life level drains,
And plus, I think it's an interesting extra level of danger, because all too often combatants and threats and whatever just turn into wars of attrition, battles of who's got the most hit points.
Yeah.
And when you have this extra layer there, it can make encounters much more interesting. So I'm going to ask a little question now, and I want an honest answer from everybody. Have you ever given out a magic item to a character, regretted it, and wangled a way of removing that item from the party?
In the past, yes. Recently, no. Like in the past, when I was younger and learning the game, you would overdo it. You'd give them too much, and oh yeah, but that was back in the day when it was, you know, the DM versus player mentality. Before I'd totally shaken that. Lately, no, I don't care. They get what they get, and often it doesn't make a difference. They'll use the items to good effect, or they won't. I've never given anything so powerful that, I mean, I have a mentality that you can't be. Players are incapable of breaking my game. All right, so I could give them godlike stats and abilities, and how they play is how they play. So no, I don't regret it. The only time I've taken away an item recently, and it wasn't because I decided it should be taken away, it was just because the circumstance allowed for it. If you guys follow my recaps, the group got that painting, that enchanted painting that if you hang it, puts a sleep spell in the area. I don't know if anybody remembers that.
I remember.
When the group got captured in that one episode, the captain of that keep found that as a curiosity and took it, but they have the means of getting it back. They just didn't follow that path.
Yeah. It's I'm sure I did it when I was younger and more petty, but not so much in my adult life. I mean, I will often, if I feel like they've gotten out of hand, the story generally takes care of it. And honestly, my experiences lately is I don't have to worry about it because my players will just forget they have stuff. So
yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah.
There are monsters, obviously, you can send. Like I could send a disenchanter after them, and it's not working anymore. But in the cases where it's clearly been a situation where maybe I've given them an item that was too powerful, especially as a homebrew guy, I'll have a conversation with my player and say, that bow I gave you, it's not quite working. Can we tweak it? And we'll come up. Like I had to do that with the guy who took the homebrew spell that I created. The first version of it was broken as hell. I'm like, hey, can we? I'm fixing that. You can still have it, and it's still going to be cool. But yeah, so. Because I didn't put like a maximum range he could teleport with the thing. I'm like, oops, or any limitations on its teleport. So, but yeah, I prefer to have a conversation and like, hey, clearly that thing's not working. It's cheesifying the game. Can I give you this instead of that or something?
I mean, probably my worst indiscretion when it comes to this, and I made a couple of mistakes here. I was making my own magic items, and it was the first time I'd run a 5th edition campaign. And I at that point, I was only just learning just how powerful the characters can become and how quickly they can breeze through things. I was running them through conversions of old modules. So I was trying to run it through with a more of the old school feel to the way the adventure worked. But the party their power levels were accelerating at a rate that I was struggling to keep up with. I was fairly new to running 5th edition at the time, and I hadn't long come back to the hobby. And the fighter had found a couple of magic swords, both homebrewed weapons along the way. And there was one of them that was particularly perturbing me. And they'd got into a habit of using Leoman's tiny hut too much as well. They would try and put themselves in a tactical position so they couldn't be spotted while casting it, and then jump inside it, and then or be inside it, and then use it as like a defensive shield almost, not how it should be used. And at this point, I didn't realize that Dragon Breath could penetrate a Loman's tiny hut. I had misread that because it's not a magical effect. Dragon Breath, of course, can get inside it, and you're not safe inside it. And this was playing through the Temple of Death, where there is a big red dragon, and they had moved up to the edge of the lair of this. They found out there was a dragon. They'd moved up to the edge of the lair, and they put themselves in Leoma's tiny hut, and they were trying to basically pop out of the hut, annoy the dragon, and jump back in the hut, as they can do if you're in the hut to start with. And of course, if I'd realised that Dragon Breath just goes straight through the hut anyway, it wouldn't have mattered. But the dragon came over and was tormenting them and talking to them. And what the warrior was doing is he was able to step outside the hut, hit the dragon, disengage, and step back in again. And they pretty much blocked the dragon in its lair. So what I had the dragon basically do is wait, use its reaction to snatch the sword, basically essentially disarm the warrior, and then retreat to the very back of its lair, wait for the hut to go down, and then fly out of the front and straight up to its other lair at the top of the mountain with the sword. Now, that could be argued as being a bit of a knobbish thing to do. But if you're tormenting an intelligent creature and you're using something that it might like to add to its hoard of treasure, I thought it was perfectly fair.
But that is fair. That's in context. That's not you as a DM deciding arbitrarily to take something away. That is using the situation. It's like a dragon is intelligent and is going to want to gather. Oh, that's a shiny, powerful magic sword. They'll be taking that. Yoink, bye.
I don't know. I won't
Totally
be letting him. I won't be letting him kill me easily with it. It hurts. It's clearly magical. Yep.
But there's still the means to get it back. The players can form a plan and try to raid the lair and get it back. That creates adventure.
Yeah, the monsters are not dumb, unless they actually are dumb.
And as well as if you used a metric, like if you didn't just say the dragon takes your sword and flies away, as opposed to no, there were die rolls involved. There was a struggle. The player had the chance to keep it. Yeah, then that's all part of the game. That's all fair.
And crucially, also, he had 2 swords. He'd found 2 magical swords. So he had another one to fall back on. It's just this particular sword was... Yeah, it was a silly homebrew thing. But equally, when I ran White Plume Mountain, there's a lot of discussion about the weapons in White Plume Mountain, just how rough they are. And I was never going to let my players keep those weapons. I basically had one of the dignitaries from the world of Greyhawk turn up and send them on the quest to retrieve the weapons so that he could put them in a very safe place. And that dignitary was Big B.
So you had like Patrick Stewart show up at the very end of the movie and make an appearance and say, "I'm here to collect your items."
And now, John, I want to hear your Patrick Stewart impression.
I can't do a Patrick Stewart impression.
Make it so,
I do already have the accent. It's just that I don't.
Yes.
I don't really
and the hairline.
Shots fired.
He teases himself enough about it. I felt it was fair game.
Yeah, but no. But basically, I set that up by having Bigby send them on the adventure to start with, and say, "Bring those back to me, and don't even think about using them because they're too dangerous. I'm going to put them in a safe place."
Yeah, I think. That's a good segue. And I mean, when those items are there, you don't necessarily have to come up with some crazy kind of almost BS contrivance. They just become an active part of the world. So sure, they've got the powerful sword or the great artifact of what's. Well, whoever actually belongs to that or has a greater vested interest in that item is likely to come looking for it. If you've got some fabled sword, chances are tales are told and people are searching for it because of whatever. And now that once it gets out that it's no longer in the depths of a dungeon somewhere and it's on some guy's hip, well, some high-level NPCs might be showing up to challenge you for your blade, or
thieves
monsters,
will be following.
Or that dragon who's like, "Hey, that would look really good in my collection. Gimme."
And that just creates adventure. That creates story and circumstance.
Exactly. It's the verisimilitude of the world. I mean, that's the greatest way to take stuff from players is just to have it happen because it would happen.
Yes.
if they found a chalice and it's part of a holy set, well, then guess what? A bunch of clerics and acolytes are probably at least going to come and bug you to get it back. Please, good sir, can you give us our holy cup back?
if you just think about it, if you are a group of adventurers and you've just returned from the fire giant's lair, which was reputed to have tons and tons of gold and platinum and jewels in it, and you've returned successfully, and you then go and celebrate in the various taverns because you've returned successfully, who are the first people who are going to get wind of that?
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. It's me, your boy, the tax man.
Well,
There's the taxman and the thieves guild.
I always think back to the end of the
Same
Dragon
thing.
Slayer movie where he kills the dragon and then the king shows up and has his like
takes credit.
I am the Dragon Slayer. I mean, I can see like you get back to the village, you're drinking, you've got your look at this, look at Black Razor, isn't it awesome? And then the king comes in, aha, my minions have done my bidding. Congratulations, man. I will be taking this off you. You're like, but
Funny that you say that.
my sword.
It's funny that you say that because I do know that in one of the Pathfinder campaigns that I played in, the group decided that every single victory that we have throughout the entire campaign, whatever loot that we acquire, we will go back to the tavern because we had just decided that this tavern is it's where we live now. We love this tavern. We love the NPCs. We would just spend every single gold piece until we were broke, and we'd go back out and continue with the module to get more gold to come back to celebrate there. Simple stuff, except for that we were hated by the community because we would just party incessantly and just drink the town dry, only for us to disappear for like several weeks and then come back and be like, we've got money now, we'll close our tabs and we'll start a new one.
One of the best ways to do it is if there's a town that they keep coming back to and cashing out their money. The next time they come back, I'd like a day's rations. That'll be 42 gold.
Yeah.
What? Well, the economy's wrecked. Inflation. Ever since you adventurers keep coming here and dropping piles of gold in our laps.
I've done that though, but not to the inflation of like the money. It's just that the group kept on coming back with every single arrow, spear, shield, and they were just like, we'll just sell it for like half the money. And I was like, yeah. So they did that like 3 or 4 times. And it came back. It was like, oh yeah, they're only buying it for like 15% of the value. I was like, what? Yeah, you dump these weapons in here every single time. You come back with 20, 30, 40 spears.
Sorry,
every
pal,
single time.
but it ain't. But magical shields ain't what they used to be.
Exactly. Like if you're gonna, inflation's gonna be a real thing. But then if we go to
serving you your food on a magic shield,
but you can also go the opposite way, where like rather than as John was mentioning, having the thieves suddenly start showing up. I mean, the thieves can also be targeted because when the player starts getting a little bit of a name for themselves, they might have a bit of a collection, and if they've got a home base, well, again, as I've been mentioning here, my Saturday group, they've got cursed items on display specifically because they know that they're going to be targeted by thieves, and they have been targeted by thieves, so it's there for them to work as a trap. But that's another way for that to be done, is that you can just have thieves show up in the middle of the night and rob them or attempt to steal from them. And what about pickpockets? Sometimes all it takes is just a lucky D100 and a random item can go missing. I mean, I've done that to one of my players in my Saturday group who was a wizard, targeting specifically their book because the thief knew that, one, he's a wizard, and two, if he gets away with that book's worth a lot of money. So he went for it, and although he failed because I rolled a 100, that was a real thing. That's how the world could go down at the end of the day. That's a dirty trick that the players will hate.
Quick test for you all. I'd like you to all pronounce the first word in this sentence.
Gesh.
Gesh.
Yeah, you know.
It's Gesh.
It's Gesh. Yes, it's Gesh. Gesh.
No, geese are the cobra chickens
Geese
that
are like 10
attack Canadians.
Waterfowl that have teeth on their tongue because that's a thing.
Yes, the spell is Gesh.
Yes,
But
pick
yes.
on the foreigner.
It
To be
doesn't.
honest-
It has nothing to do with everybody mispronounced it growing up.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
I'm gonna
absolutely.
go cast Geos on him.
It was
Come on,
Geas.
Doof.
Where we're from.
Come on, Doof, back me up here.
Jeez.
I was about to say Geos.
You can go to hell.
It's Gaelic. That's why the S has the sh sound.
It's Gaelic and therefore nonsensical, and therefore none of the letters actually are what they sound like. The
So
only
let's
way it
just,
could be worse is if it was Welsh, and then it would be like one vowel, 52 consonants, but yet having 7 vowel sounds. But
I'll just start bringing in like the 3 extra letters that our Scandinavians run around with. At least we can pronounce that right. What other ways would you consider to be a dirty trick for your games? You know, aside from taxation, tolls, and theft.
Anything fair within context of the world is not dirty play, though. I mean, I when I think of dirty tricks, I think of the DM playing power moves or targeting players or doing things
wake
like
up one morning in the inn and the stuff's gone.
yeah, exactly, things like that. We before we started the stream, what did I call it? What was the term I used? Meta. What was it? Meta hijinks.
Yeah.
Meta. Yeah, I think it was meta hijinks
or something to that effect. Yeah, that's
meta shenanigans.
Cool. Meta shenanigans. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
I remember being the victim of such nonsense back in the day as a player, having after having wooed the tavern wench, waking up with my stuff gone. You know? I mean, yes, that does happen, but does an 11-year-old know that kind of stuff happens?
Yeah.
I mean, there are ways to
Pardon me for being 10 and not being well versed in the finer nuances of prostitution.
I think I'd be more worried if you were, but I think consequences are great, and DMs should consider the actions and what the consequences might be. Those are good ways of targeting the players, of not getting back at them, but having their actions come full circle and create more story, more adventure. Blanking here. Oh yeah, we'll use an example of the story I told earlier about the hobgoblin children that the PCs were killing. If they think the hobgoblins are not going to retaliate in very, very brutal fashion, then they're idiots, because a group of invaders just came into their home, murdered their children and half of their women. The hobgoblins not only must retaliate, but they'll want to retaliate. They have to retaliate because they have to have a show of strength, because they are ostensibly the leaders of this alliance of tribes in the Caves of Chaos. But they also want to. I mean, this is a personal slight. So they would, and so the retaliation can be brutal. I don't have to play fair with the characters. If the characters get caught by the hobgoblins are going to be nasty. And that's a fair retaliation. That is a fair contextual consequence.
I mean, I think I've mentioned before where one of the players split from the group, met a spellcaster Yonti, and they got knocked out because they got caught by, turning sticks to snakes. And they fell unconscious, and I just went, well, that's it. Roll up a new character. I'm like, why would the Yonti, the most cold-blooded of most monsters you will be running into, have mercy? Like that just would not be within the context of the world.
Maybe they're going to save you for sacrifice later. I don't know.
Yeah, no, there's a multitude of things, but at the very same time, my options would simply have been, all right, player, you're now going to sit and watch whether or not the rest of the group is actually going to get your character back in time, or I can make you get up a new character and we can just continue and then move it from there. So, but in those situations, it's just like, here you go. The consequences of your actions. You've made yourself a known enemy of the Yonti. They know who you are. You are named. You are recognized. They've got your sketches and everything. There's not really a lot of leeway that they're going to be giving you in that situation. So yeah, it makes perfect sense.
So,
Yeah.
we've anyone got anything to add to the topics we've mentioned so far? How long
Well,
have we
I know
been
that-
here?
We've only been here for
55
Started
minutes?
at 4, yeah.
There are some things I've even thought about using from video games. There's in the game Ark, there is one particular dinosaur that they've coded into the game that when it hits you, it snatches an item out of your inventory. Like if it's in your readied inventory or your hand, it can steal it. And like that would be an interesting monster to have run into in a D&D encounter. Okay, so the thing runs up to you, hits you, say versus such and such, or it runs off with your item, because not only is it taking the item from the character, but it's then really giving him an intense desire to get it back. I don't know how much time my wife and I spent running across a freaking beach on that game or through the jungle trying to find that stupid little dinosaur that had my one batch of food or whatever that I had left. But yeah, that was I've looked at using that.
I mean, yeah, you want to the Aztecs of the the D&D world. If you were captured by them in the 16th century, it would be which god is it? Tlaloc who wants to receive the hearts today?
Yeah, it depends on what phase the moon is in, what time of year.
So, other little tricks a DM can employ. Something like, I mean, there's the. I know Sean doesn't like this. I mentioned this chatting the other day. When you're giving players the illusion of playing in a sandbox, and you haven't quite prepared what you really as much as you should. So whichever direction you head in, that's where the ogre lair is.
The quantum ogre.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I cast Dispel Illusion and play a true sandbox. That's what I do.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the quantum ogre either. I mean, the ogre's still there where they didn't go, but again, I run my worlds where you didn't go to the ogre. Well, now the ogre continues his rampage, or he continues to build his army, or
for me,
there are other things. Sorry, go on, John.
So yeah, for me, it depends on how I'm running the game. If I'm at the table with all my materials to hand, then yeah, I can sort something out quickly. But if you're running, say, through Roll20 with pre-prepared maps and whatever, it can be very difficult to create something on the fly. So then I think it is quite excusable to use the quantum ogre.
I mean, isn't this what random tables are for?
I would again argue it's only as limiting as you limit yourself when it comes to the online. So I can open a folder right now and I will have 700 pre-made maps for me. And
you're organized.
You're my point is, like, if you are if the argument is you need to prepare these maps, well, there's still the theories of the mind. There is still going to be doodling, which again you don't require a lot of skills to just do if you need a map. So I really would argue that the online is not a limitation. It's not an excuse for that. You could still have a full-on sandbox.
I created a random terrain generator on my Roll20, and it's basically 24 tiles. Yeah. 4 layers, so like a forest, a plain, like a mud, whatever, and then I just have the players roll. It's like, okay, roll d4, boom, 1, 2, 3, 4. This tile is forest, this tile is plain, and then boom, instant random terrain, and then I can put whatever token I want.
Yeah, I would just generally continue on Theater of the Mind if they really derailed it. But I also use a very minimal Roll20 or virtual tabletop, even when I am playing online. And there's Bear.
Here's Bear, yes.
Hello, sir.
Hello, Bear.
Yeah, there's Bear. I get a t-shirt that says that. I think there's Bear. Hey there, hi there, ho there, everybody. How you doing?
Yeah. But I think Omanal's got a good point here. The quantum ogre is very much like Schrodinger's cat. Until you find it, it's not fixed.
What have I walked into? Quantum ogres?
This
Yeah,
is
but
high
the
level AD&D, Bear.
The problem with the quantum ogre is it really comes down to how much verisimilitude, realism, whatever you want in your game. If you're not invested in that and that's not your style of play, then by all means, quantum ogre away. But for me, I would feel like I'm cheesing my players, having them find that ogre where he's not supposed to be. It's a different matter. Like if they don't go to the ogre's lair and then later on they run into the same ogre wandering out and about, with some passage of time. I don't call that a quantum ogre. But if the ogre's whole lair and the adventure associated with him suddenly teleports from northeast to northwest, I mean, what does he have? A summer home?
Yeah.
But
well, I think it all depends on whether you as a DM have already defined to the players where that ogre is.
No, you don't. I really disagree, because you can still have this whole things are happening in the background that the players will never see. I mean, I'm gonna be dragging Doof in for this one, because I've shown Doof how I deal with at least my management of factions and how I do things there, and then how I can translate that into actions, information, and how I will then put that on an actual map for me, the DM, to then see. I can see where the different factions have got, their sources of income. I can see where they've got their hidden items, armies, groups, factions, agents. I can see all of that on the map. I can keep a tab on all of that, and I can have all these different things going on in the background. And the players might not know, or they might stumble upon them. Like my Saturday group, they stumbled upon an area where the Yonti were harvesting money.
So in your game, is your map pretty much fixed beforehand, or is it open to adaptation during play?
It's open to adaptation throughout the play, because every faction still gets a turn. They still make their moves. They move around. They are not fixed in a position. They move around as things happen. Depending on, let's say, like some of them might have a stronghold, well, that's a fixed position, but their units, their items, their agents are not fixed. They move around. They are as organic as the players are. They're not bound by what they do.
Okay.
That would be the quantum entangled ogre.
And
that's for me. That's where the ogre exists, but there are other connected elements that can bring the party back to the ogre. That encounter in the ogre's lair, that dungeon that leads to the ogre's lair. If they don't run into the ogre out and about on his own, up to ogre shenanigans, there is the fallout, the other adventure hooks. Another village razed or raided, another caravan gone missing, a messenger from the king. Hey, why aren't you killing that ogre that you said you were going to kill? Those are the entanglements of the quantum ogre, rather than having the ogre move that brings the party back to the ogre. That's how I would rather run that in my games, because it feels much more believable. Still getting back there, but it still gives the players the option to perpetually ignore the ogre if they want to, but eventually that's just going to have some effect depending on the degree to which the ogre poses a threat. I mean, if he's just a local threat, then fine.
Quick question.
There's still going to be an ogre in the countryside.
Quick question. Are we off topic?
I believe so.
All right.
Are we?
No, that's a dirty DM trick.
Is true.
Moving the ogre. That's what we're talking. The whole point of what we're talking
All
about.
right.
I was about to say, I mean, yeah, I agree with everything Eli said. And one of the reasons I do or won't do it is it comes down to trust. I present my game in a certain way. My players expect that. If they find out that I have moved an encounter to their path, then they stop believing the sandbox, right? They stop believing in their choice, and that their choices have meaning and consequence. It really is that simple for me. I want them to be able to trust that I'm adjudicating the game as fairly as possible. So if I've established that there's an ogre lair out there, the ogre lair is fixed, whether or not they get there.
Yeah.
Bear looks perplexed.
Well, I'm just not going to agree. I mean, it's not that I think it's wrong. I mean, everybody referees in their own style, but I don't feel a need, unless I've given them the information in advance where exactly the ogre's lair is. I'm more at the start of the conversation where it's like it can move based on the choices they're building. If I've planned for them to fight an ogre, well, look, they have agency, but if they know they're going after an ogre and then my players start avoiding the ogre at all costs, that's kind of them being dicks. That's not the
Well,
DM being a dick.
But that's their
them
choice. That's their choice.
Sure.
They
But I'm
will.
a player too as the DM, and it's my choice to keep moving that ogre in front of them, whether they like it or not. As long as I'm not.
I think
forcing
Sean and
them.
Sean and I are the kind of GM that would just run with it, and that's where our fun is.
Yeah,
Too.
yeah.
Yeah,
like-
but Bear's right. Everyone's got their own preference for DMing or
Everyone.
refereeing, and we all respect that. But no, I do understand it though, because as you were saying, Bear, you're a player as well. You want to have fun for it, and you've been putting in the efforts as the DM, for it. So you want to see that encounter be played out one way or the other, whether it's negotiations, combat, or something else. That is still something you want to have a resolution, which fair enough.
But the caveat I put at the front of that, and I want to make this caveat clear because I'm not shitting on Sean's statement at all, because I think Sean's right, and the way he runs his game is good too, is that if my players have taken a quest from the village elder, the burgermeister, whomever, to go get an ogre, and then they spend the next 4 sessions doing everything in their power to avoid that ogre, man, come on. Like, at some point, I'm going to have to just have the ogre show up at your hotel. Jesus. Be like,
well, and that's not the quantum ogre, though. I mean, at that point, if the ogre shows up, or the burgermeister comes to the door and says, "Why have you not found the ogre?"
Yeah, but that is the consequence of their actions. That's what's beautiful. It's like, okay,
find the ogre.
we will take your money and hunt the ogre, and then they do everything but the people who paid to have that ogre hunted are going to come looking, and they're going to have pitchforks and torches, and that's fine. That's wonderful.
Perhaps I just don't understand the concept of the quantum ogre. I apologize.
No, it's all good. The quantum ogre is very much the idea that the ogre, the whole dungeon that the ogre is in, or the encounter with the ogre, whole cloth, moves to where
With the players.
into the path of the players.
Is this like a Dragon magazine article or something?
No, it's modern. It's kind of modern parlance. I'm sure it had its effect. It's equivalent back in the day, but
sure.
It's the difference between having, like you said, the ogre show up. That is not quantum ogering. That's just consequences that's reasonable, believable, realistic consequences of the actions of the player. Like I was saying earlier, if they don't go to the ogre, the longer they take to go to the ogre's lair, the more we hear about other villages, other caravans raised, other ogres moving into the area. Hey, these are fertile hunting grounds. Now we got 2 ogres. We got 3 ogres. Now there's an ogre warband. Oh wait, shit, there's a hill giant.
Well, I mean, further, let's say the ogre's lair, nobody knows where it is, and part of the quest is finding that lair. And then finding that lair should represent a potential challenge, not just, you will eventually find it.
Yeah,
but
if you move it, the players don't have that same sense of reward of actually having
tracked the lair.
having found the.
Well, if they don't know where it is and they don't know that you're moving it, they would absolutely have that sense of reward because they'd have found the ogre's lair like they set out to do, as long as you made it challenging for them. Like, this is the thing I'm not understanding. My players don't see the map. They don't know where the ogre is. So ultimately, the ogre is wherever I place the ogre, isn't it? Or am I sorry if I'm crazy and not getting it?
That is a style of doing it. So
right.
for me to run my world the way I run my world, the world makes sense to me as well as the players.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the ogre lair would be in a place, and also if I moved it, I would feel bad. We're talking about the DM's a player. I would feel like I have let my players down. I have done something wrong. I haven't done the best Eli DMing that I've done. Because I've got a style of DMing. If I've not got those characters to that ogre layer, or flexed with their moves, then I have failed myself. I've let myself down, and I'm not having fun at that point. It's probably affecting my ability to play. But that's my style of play. Your style of play, where it's like, sort of a procedurally generated campaign world. I guess that would be another way of kind of thinking about the quantum ogre. You're playing a procedurally generated RPG. Somewhere in the algorithm of the world building, there is an ogre lair, and it will show up when it shows up. Even if you get the rumor in the village, look out for the ogre lair, is in the northwest, and you're like,
If I may step in here.
Yep.
I think we're okay to just move on to the next topic.
We're not allowed to talk about the ogre anymore.
I'm
Okay.
just- move
You
on.
and me offline, man. We'll hammer out this ogre thing. I promise.
Yeah.
My next one is adjusting encounters on the fly. I'm going to give you an example of something a DM once did in one of our games, and we quite enjoyed it. But I can see how people might think it was a bit of a dick move. We're playing a game, and we were attacked by a pirate ship, and we pretty much did them in about 2 rounds. We got them to surrender in 2 rounds by beating up a load of the minions and intimidating and tormenting the captain into submitting. And one of our characters said to their captain, "Well, I thought you said you were going to slit our throats. That was really easy. I mean, from the way you were talking, it sounded like you had a troll hidden in the hold of your ship." At which point the DM went, "Ha ha, surprise!" And a troll leapt out of the hold of the ship and then said that we'd given him the idea to do that.
Dirty pool.
Yeah, I'd be yelling cheap.
Dirty
Cheap.
pool, old man. Dirty pool.
Boo, this
No.
man. Boo. Well, one, don't reveal that you did that, first and foremost. Because once you start revealing your hand, the magic's gone. That's the symbol of it. Exactly. There's no illusion when you reveal what it is.
No, I'm more than happy to use the players' contributions to my insanity well down the road. Like,
Yeah,
troll in
there's
the
nothing wrong
hold.
with
Okay,
that.
the next ship you get on.
No, I don't change things on the
Happens to
fly.
have
It's
a
like
troll.
it is what it is. And if it's too easy, then it's too easy. If it's too hard, then the players have to adapt.
I ran a BX Old School Essentials game just before the pandemic started, and they were coming out of the wilderness and they were heading back to town, and they came across on a random encounter a green dragon munching down on some cattle. Now the thing wasn't looking at them. Hi, are you comfortable? Okay. The thing wasn't looking at them. The thing wasn't dealing with them. The thing was just happily eating some cows. And the druid says, "I can't know," and shoots an arrow at it. And I'm like, "What? Okay. You want the dragon's attention, level 3 party? You've got it," and it proceeded to wipe them out. And that was the end of that. That was the end of the story. I don't adjust shit for my players. I used to be a big, like, babysit, protect, put buffers on them. Oh, helicopter DM, if you want to use that term. And then I just realized, the only way they're going to learn is the day they figure out not everything's a fight. Some things are just there for flavor or for visual. And, so I'm not going to adjust stuff on the fly. I'm not going to add monsters. I'm not going to subtract monsters. I'm not going to change hit points. I'm not going to change AC stuff. I'm going to run it as it runs.
Mhm.
They make the decision if they're starting that fight, not me. Unless I ambush them, then I'm deciding. But that's different.
Yeah, I mean, I think older versions of D&D already sort of supported that. That's why there's like a whole ass green dragon on like a 3rd level encounter table. It's like,
But not
It's like-
all encounters are meant to be fought, and that
Well,
green
yeah,
dragon
exactly.
shows up. That's a role playing encounter. That's you're my minions now, or I breathe on you.
well, and the thing is,
Go
you can-
get this thing for me.
you
Go
don't
kill
have
the quantum ogre for me.
You don't have to play those encounters as even role play or combat encounters. They can just be you see a green dragon flying overhead.
Yeah,
Because the players now know there are green dragons.
I've
If
had
the
a
player then sits there and goes, "Oh, well, I try to get the jump on it and shoot it with an arrow." Well, that's your dumbass.
Yeah. I remember
He was just flying over, going home with a full bag of dicks, And that's a hamburger chain in Seattle, by the way. And they sell by the bag. So,
Oscar, you may speak now.
Thank you. I remember a couple of years back, I rolled up for Wyvern to be there, and I was again getting back into the whole swing of AD&D and how the whole encountering was done. So it's like, Wyvern, the group's level 2. I've got no idea why they should be running into this, so I'll just start off slow by, they see it from the distance, and as it got bigger, the players was like, oh, well, it's getting bigger, and it was already the size of a bird, so we're just going to start scattering in, and the moment that they learned there was a wyvern, it was like, there's a wyvern around here. We're in wyvern territory. What we should finish this quest and just immediately find another area to go adventuring, because we are not going to be dealing with apex predators in this area. So let's go into the quick dungeon. Let's get back out, and we'll hop a town or two over, and we'll start anew there because we are in like if that's hunting here, we don't want to be here. Equally so, my Saturday group, I rolled up a random encounter of a rock. They learned that a rock now hunts this territory, and they invested thousands of gold to protect the cattle of their land. Because they're like, we don't want the rock to just swoop down and steal our cows. So all the cows now had spiked, like leather armor with spikes on them, so that they wouldn't just be picked up.
I like the small dogs with the spiky harnesses.
Exactly. They're just like, no, my cows. They will not take my cows. Just
Yeah, and those cheesy encounters that are above the player's pay grades also invites them to come up with interesting and creative ways to deal with it. I had a party that's like was sent out to take care of the wyvern. They got to the wyvern's lair. They're like, that thing is freaking big. We're not going to deal with it. And so they found a back entrance into its lair and collected one of its shed stingers from when it was growing and went back to town. We killed it.
Get the money and run.
Exactly.
yeah. Oh yeah.
So somebody has mentioned gold bugs.
Yeah, that was McDuck.
While you've been chatting away there, I've just been reading my Finfolio, just reminding myself what the AD&D gold bug did. A beetle with a flattened circular body and a golden shell, the size and shape of a gold piece. It's a very sluggish creature and spends most of its time asleep, often choosing a pile of gold coins as its bed. Only a very close examination will distinguish it from the coins on which it lies. It has no treasure of its own, it inhabits that of others. When disturbed, it inflicts a poisonous bite like that of a large spider. 1d4 damage, save versus poison or die.
Well, Spelljammer had the analog to the Alien, where it comes onto your ship in the form of a large gemstone that your players will never be able to resist, like a diamond this big, and you put it in your treasure hold, and then it hatches and goes full xenomorph on your Spelljammer vessel.
Gotcha monsters are a staple, right? And
Yep.
players will
The
learn
dawn of the
to
game.
work around them. There's a similar creature in Forgotten Realms called a Locklurker. It's basically an insect coin that has a scorpion-like stinger. I've been using them because it's native to Evening Star in the Haunted Halls. They were using them in my game, and the players learned real fast. Okay, we stand back and poke any loose coins with sticks to see if they move.
Okay, so have anyone here ever considered putting explosive rune on coins when the
We used
players
to put
have
explosive runes on random pieces of paper and leave them in villages.
Well, yeah, naturally. I've specifically started putting them on coins because eventually the players have
Folded
to
piece
count.
of paper.
Yeah.
Ooh, what about putting them on a scroll and leaving that in the treasure hoard? Like, what kind of scroll is that? I want to see. Wow, that's the kind that hurts.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Put on a spell book.
Let's not forget the other gotcha monsters too. Which are the look-alike monster, the gas spore to the beholder.
Yes.
What a dick move that one is, eh?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's like it's clearly designed as a nuisance for higher level parties, because you know that a lower level party is going to see a beholder or what they think is a beholder and pee themselves and run away. Yeah. It's going to take the higher level. Ha ha! I will get it. Whack! And now I'm poisoned.
I'm going to disagree on the runaway part. I literally have players, I could name them right now, who'd be like, okay, wait, let me go talk to it and see if we can maybe make a deal with it. Like, they're just...
I'm not saying it's a universal behavior.
Was that, sorry?
I said it's not. I'm not saying it's a universal behavior amongst players. I mean, they're clearly players that are going to go like, "What? I'm faced with the physical embodiment of Cthulhu. I'll take him on."
Yeah.
Hand me my sword. Better yet, I like a challenge. Hand me my dagger.
Hand me my spoon.
I'll engage in a psychic duel with the great old one.
You go, girl.
Yeah, I agree.
Those monsters have been a staple throughout. The little old rock grub. Players soon learn
because
rock grubs.
Yeah, because every player, I mean, you have to figure the Rock Grub was created after a DM, watched his players want to root through every pile of trash
And the ear
in every
seeker as
dungeon.
well. I
Oh,
listen at the
God.
door. I listen at the door. I listen at the door. Ow!
Let's look at other things like invisible stalkers. There's a whole ass invisible creature that's going to sneak up and kill you. Or thought eaters. It's it's gonna eat your brain. Or behold, the intellect devourer. You meet an NPC. He's kind of acting a little strange, and suddenly, freaking brain on legs jumps out of his head.
Makes
Stuff
the
like
game
rock
fun.
grubs and that it makes me think that in the old days, man, back in Minnesota, they were just getting they'd be so annoyed with something a player did. The next time they'd have something ready to go to fuck them over on it.
It is clear that is the
just
case.
How antagonistic were those games? Really,
Well, and the piercer, it's a stalactite that falls on you. And then we're like, they're used to those. How about a roper? It's a giant stalactite that's going to slap you around with its tentacles.
Don't forget the boule, or boule, whatever however you pronounce it.
Boule,
Yeah, and
We say boulette only because they say it's supposed to be French and it's ETTE, therefore boulette.
Whatever. The point is that the land shark would effectively come and they would start going for your mules and then your halflings and they eat all of these things because the players would just be like, "Oh, I'm going to bring mules into the underground." It's like, "Well, not anymore." Yoink.
Yeah, that's another DM dick move right there. Is just having monsters that target specific character elements for food.
Just target their mules full stop. Just we found all this gold and we have no mules.
I think there's a monster, I can't remember its name, that basically blanks out spell books and scrolls if it comes in contact with them.
I wouldn't put it past it there to be somewhere in there. I mean, there are so many.
That monster's just invaded one of your houses by the sound of things.
My go-to dick move as a DM when I've had just about enough of my fucking campaign and my players is to just throw a fucking deck of many things into a dungeon. Because they all know what it does. They all know how bad news it is. But
that's a consensual thing. They have to choose to do it. It's not something you can just spring on them and they got it.
But
all
one of the players is gonna do it.
They cannot resist it. It's like
the shiny red button on Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah.
The history eraser button.
So I love Gardmore Abbey from Nentir Vale. It's like the magic item at the bottom of the dungeon in this welcome to Nentir Vale. You're gonna go do this thing, and by the way, there's a deck of many things in it. Good luck.
Let's not forget that there are 3 volumes or more of Grimtooth's traps. So clearly, the jerk move mentality is a thing.
Here's a question I'd like to ask you guys.
Yeah,
go on.
Not using magic.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on these traps that were built 10,000 years ago that would require an MIT engineering degree today to create, and the poison's still fresh on the darts or what have you? Does it just seem like sometimes you're stretching the credibility of some of these traps a little bit,
Absolutely.
which is what Grimtooth would do after a while, right?
Yeah, so, I tend to not use them. I did a lot when I was a kid, obviously, and younger, and before I started thinking about it. But I find other ways. Either they're being maintained by the humanoids in the dungeon.
Yeah, that's the easiest solution.
Or the dragon has subcontractors. He brings in a cleaning service every 6 weeks.
Or the traps are magically sustained, in which case that's a potential for them to discover.
I said without magic.
Oh, did you? Right.
I have a solution. I have a solution. That's crypt things. Those little bastards with OCD who will maintain all of the traps within the dungeon, they will specifically go out to another town dressed up in full disguises, illusions, and everything. Oh, hello, adventurers. I need all of these requirements. Yes, some of them are poisonous. Thank you very much. Bring them back and maintain all of the traps. Yeah. Lubricate all those wheels. Because, yes, these are the creatures I put in my dungeons.
Is this from your mind?
Sorry?
Is this from your mind, or is this from the book?
This is from the book.
Crypt things exist,
yeah, they're a real thing. Absolutely over the top OCD. They will maintain the crypt or whatever they've been given, and I take it to the logical conclusion of they will subcontract, hire, and create undead.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Now I understand why I'm not familiar with it. Thank you.
They've also got a superb piece of art.
Yeah,
Yes.
dang it, you're quicker on the draw than I was, because that's what I was going to do.
Exactly. I love using it for that.
Fastest fiend folio in the West.
So I use it specifically for that. Plus, they've got this wonderful little thing of like they don't technically attack you; they just point at you, and you're teleported to another part of the. Yeah, you teleport to another part of the dungeon. Have fun.
Dungeon, oh, you're kind. I teleport them 500 feet straight up into the air.
Now, my answer to that is just to stick to like hazards or traps that make sense. Like instead of like engineered traps, making the environment dangerous.
I think it all depends on the nature. I think it all depends on the nature of the game and the nature of the scenario you're using. Because obviously, a fun house it doesn't need to be explained. A fun house,
but also magic. I mean, magic is a thing in the game world, so magic is.
I mean, your White Plume Mountains and your Ghost Tower of Inverness and those classic old modules, they're not designed to make sense. And the most obvious one for traps, which has to be brought up in this discussion, we're going to have a talk about the Tomb of Horrors.
So many dogs died in our run through the Tomb of Horrors. We bought so many dogs and just released them at the door to see what they triggered on the way through.
So going around the table, who's run it and who's played in it, and if so, how many times and how many deaths?
Neither. I haven't played or run it.
Played twice. I just remember pain. That's
Elf?
Played part of it when I was a kid. But we didn't get very far into it.
Yeah,
we've already had a zero. We've already had a zero from Doof. He's just made it. And
I've only read it.
I played once in high school. We made it 30 feet through, and that was the end of all our characters and about 25 dogs. It was not good.
I think my group was convinced, like, okay, we've gotten to the demon door. We weren't quite sure what it was. Someone convinced us it was a portal, so lock arms, jump through.
Wow! In one move.
Is that the one with the Sphere of Annihilation in it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we put like things in there, we couldn't hear if it dropped or what was going on, so we weren't really sure if we wanted to touch it. So it was just like, come on, guys, we're not gonna die from jumping through a portal.
Well,
that was the point.
In actuality, he was wrong.
I've run it twice, and one character made it to the final tomb at the end, only because he managed to. He had a limited wish, which he, after seeing all the torture that everyone else had gone through, he basically said, I wish to meet the bastard that created this adventure. So I teleported him straight to the tomb, alone, into the last room, alone. And that's the only time anyone has ever even got close to reaching a Serarak. Of the other 20 or so characters that went in between the two groups, because they had backup characters go in from time to time as well when the first original ones died, one character survived, but he fled from the tomb naked and having become a she. Having gone in as a high-level male mage with loads and loads of stuff, he basically fled as a naked female, terrified of the place. And that was it. That was the only survivor who would never ever go back again, tormented forever.
All right, I'm gonna have to bow out, folks. So I'll talk to you guys later.
All right, cheers, Elf.
Eli, we'll catch you around.
Bye, Elf.
I do think I have to drop out here as well because my work is crazy. So I need some beauty sleep. All right.
Okay, no problem. That means we have had a very patient Omen Owl waiting in the wings. So thank you, Elfbait. Thank you, Saxius, for joining us. Really, really good of you as always. But we have a very patient Omen Owl who has been sat waiting in the wings. So here we go.
Hello, sir.
Hello. You talked about that paladin. Has he met a dryad yet?
Not as of yet.
I mean, that is the you're talking about dick moves that you can do.
Yeah.
Especially if he doesn't have too much of an intelligence. It's like, ooh, look who has an 18 charisma.
Charisma, yes. Nope, no
Yes.
dryads yet. No.
Oh, okay. And then it's a good creature. So then they're like, oh, what do we do?
No, they're neutral.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was the
Dryads
paladin.
are true neutrals, so he'll
Are
defend
they?
himself.
I thought they were neutral good, or is that just the?
I mean, they
Oh,
can be, I suppose, but the default is neutral.
I'd have to go double check and see. Yeah, but even so, it's like, well, now what do you do?
I want to talk about long play dick moves where you really, really, really make the player feel it when it happens. I ran a 2E campaign where in the first session they basically destroyed an artifact that caused a huge chunk of the world to be. So they wound up on trial in front of all their relative gods, and they were given a task, which was you must do this to redeem yourself. And the priest, who was a cleric of a law goddess, was struck blind. Since justice is blind, you will be blind. And he prayed, and she sent a paladin to assist him, and he and the paladin became quite close. And they spent 8 or 9 easily levels growing closer with her protecting him and being his eyes while he did everything. They defeated it. By the time they were done, they defeated a vampire lord, the whole 9 yards. And then they're going through a treasure trove. And I described the orb that's there. And the cleric says to the paladin, pick that up and hand it to me. So she picks it up, but it's an orb of alignment change, which immediately flips her alignment to chaotic evil. So this person that he has trusted his life with, he's grown close to, is now suddenly hell-bent to destroy him. And the player's face when it happened was just like, like just watching all those months and months and years of campaigning turn into this thing was so satisfying. It's like, you ever do like a long play dick move to a player?
Well, I'll tell you now, I don't view that as a dick move, though. That's it's not though. That's the situation. That's the story. That's the consequence. It's not you just deciding on a whim to flip the script and power moving. That's they presumably, especially at 9th level or higher, had the means to, augury that thing or divine, just like, oh, don't touch that, right? That kind of thing. They had the means at their disposal to identify the danger. Did they not? That's not a dick move. That's just the game.
Oh, well, here's one from 1E. Players drink 2 healing potions, and then you roll on the healing potion. Are you all on the potion?
Missability table, yeah.
And that's perfectly legitimate in my view, because there are different ways to make different potions with the same effect. And if you didn't get it from the same source, kablooey. It's true. I mean, if you look at it, it's, everyone assumes, oh no, it's all made. No, it's not. If you actually look at it, it's not from the same batch. Good luck. There's a dick move you can do. The other one, of course, is using the intelligent sword that starts taking over the player.
Elric.
Yeah.
But these are all elements of the game, right? As opposed to defying, like, just you doing the DM power play and pulling the rug out from under the players by well, I was gonna say with a dick move, with by going beyond the context.
Oh, no.
Arbitrarily deciding, I don't like the way this is going, so I'm going to say this is going to happen. You are now evil. Like, well, just because I decide.
That's an asshole move. There's a difference between the two, right? Like a dick move is like, haha, gotcha. And they go, no, you're such a dick. What you're talking about is an asshole move where it's just like, fuck you, I'm ruining me. It's like,
well, there's that one. What's a few more that you can do if you're actually playing with followers, and then you decide to throw in a white or one of these other level drain creatures that doesn't have to do a lot of damage, but they're only 0 level. As soon as they get hit, they start having undead rise up, which is what I prefer rather than just the pure level drain. It's like, oh, if you kill it, he'll come back. And it's like, oh my god, vampire's really scary.
Talking about sort of like scenario-based moves, there's a few Call of Cthulhu scenarios that I've heard about that have all sorts of little twists in them, I think somebody was talking about this the other day, and I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been somebody I was talking to at the convention, but they were talking about a scenario where they spent multiple sessions going through this long convoluted scenario protecting this little girl whose life was in danger?
Cthulhu thing?
It was you. It was you.
Yeah, baby.
Yes. Yeah. You
Scarred me.
continue. You continue.
So we finished up a vampire LARP one night. This is when I was living in Vancouver back in the 90s. And we got together at one of the guys' apartments. And we were just drinking and smoking and having a good time. And someone said, let's role play. And our buddy Dan said, I'll run you guys through a Cthulhu adventure. We went, okay. And we were investigators, and we were hired by this mother to protect her daughter who was being hunted by these cultists who wanted to sacrifice her. So we spent the entire night fighting cultists, running from cultists, trying to thwart the cultists, doing everything we can to keep this little girl alive. And then at midnight, she thanks us and turns into an elder monster and kills us all. Because the cult weren't evil. They were actually trying to save the world by killing this little girl. And we're so hell-bent to be heroes.
Well,
What a twist.
Did you make sure you were watching Omen at the time?
Jesus, yeah.
See, so
Anyway,
obviously,
I played Cthulhu, to be honest. I never played Cthulhu after that because I was like, well, that sucked. I mean, it was great, but fuck, it sucked.
But yeah, I mean, that obviously that story struck a chord with me. So I remember, I couldn't remember where I'd heard it from because I've talked to lots of people about games all the time. But yeah, I'd remembered it. So that's. I thought it was a great move.
Giant dick
bring up
move,
something.
but it's a good dick move. Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead, Emma.
I'm going to mention something that's kind of on the same thing, which is you don't kill off your players, but you make sure that you steal everything off of them. So whenever they're fighting someone, so it just gets them to the point where they're just incredibly angry as this guy just keeps on coming through. It's like, oh, what did this party do? Well, we could have killed you, but instead we stole all your items, and then we humiliated you. And then you have to work your way up again, and then they do it again every so often. Just like, oh.
Going to stealing items or whatever, have any of you ever run the Slavers series of adventures in AD&D?
No, never even played them. No.
You mean for A4?
Always wanted my group to get there, but they never get that high. So
One of the most awkward moments in that whole series is at the end of A4, where A3, where the players are pitted against a group of slavers who they cannot beat. And the whole point of that encounter exists purely to throw them into the dungeons for A4, the finale, to strip them of everything they own, to remove all of their spells, and to leave them with nothing but a loincloth.
That's it. That goes against my gaming sensibilities. I'd try to make the fight hard. I'd encourage them, through the character, through the NPCs, you're going to want to surrender, but I would have to rewrite that to allow for the chance of success.
I'm going to bring a little bit differently. I don't mind it as a player if you're going to play it like a Conan, which is you wake up, basically, how do I want to put this? You're no longer playing, but suddenly becomes narration. They've trapped you here. You've done this. You were unfortunately captured here, and then you wake up in the dungeon. It's that kind of thing where it just becomes narrative and say, okay, here's what you go. But you have to have players willing to do that too. But that's one of the things that, everyone talks about one shots, but I kind of like the episodic, which is different than a campaign. You're using your same character, so it counts as that. But, the episodes are kind of one shots as you play through.
I know what you mean.
It's like, oh, look. And that's why I said the Conan stuff. Oh, my God. He woke, you drank too much this night. You woke up in the dungeon and, this occurs. And players are like, oh, okay. And they just understand that if you can do the episodic aspect from that. But, yeah.
The only reason I am tempted to forgive that particular encounter is simply because A4 in the Dungeons of the Slave Lords is such an excellently done adventure. It's just a horrible way of starting it.
I agree with you. It's at the end of A3, I would be pissed off if I was going over there. Now, if you had told me, hey, look, this is the plan, you're going to come over here, and they're going to, if you tell me in advance, I'm all for it. I know that Squirrel Hermit earlier was talking about, that's like cheating behind the dice. As a player, I'm okay with it if you tell me, hey, guys, they'll make a more fun encounter and story, and I have trust in you. Really, it comes down to the trust in the DM. But what I don't want to do is feel like we're doing the climatic battle, and all of a sudden it's either anticlimactic which I know everyone's talking about. Well, I wouldn't add monsters. No offense, if the encounter isn't that much fun, I'd be like, man, that was kind of a letdown. You built up, we were all expecting it, and then it's like all the movies you go through, and then all of a sudden it's the two enemies decide to shake hands and walk away, skipping and singing. You're just like, you'll just rage quit on the movie. Like, no, I want to be satisfying. But
Bear, I'm aware you came into it all through second edition. I don't know how familiar you are with the older modules of AD&D.
I started in 84, 85. So I played Lost Caverns of Sludge Hank and stuff like that.
But A1 through A4 was also Against the Slavers, was a super module in second edition.
So it was Slavers led to Giants led to Drow, right? Like that was the sort of the path that you went on. I never did that.
It was Temple of Hamlet, and then that went into Against the Slavers, and then it was
they were retrofitted. They were retrofitted together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of the railroad. It would be one of those cases. Yeah, I'm willing to abandon a path if the players if their actions lead that way. Like, so if I was running A3 and I would make sure the fight was fair. If they won, they won. I'm not going to railroad them into A4. I might try another way that's more organic, but I'm not going to say this is an unbeatable encounter. You will lose. That just that offends my game sensibilities. It's like, no. I
personally think a better way of running the series is pretty much what happened when I ran it through. A2 is such a tough module. You let that play out, but if the characters die in that, you don't kill them, you capture them, and that way you are spared running A3, which was the poorest one of the series by a country mile, and then you get to play A4, which is that whole different change of pace where you basically have to find your way out of a volcano that is about to erupt, and all you have are your loincloths, and you're level 5 or 6, and suddenly kobolds that can see in the dark become deadly. You find yourselves fighting with bones. You take your loincloths off and fill them with stones to hit things with.
The monk in my group would be, I ain't got no problem. I'm good to go.
If you can see. If you can see.
True.
Well, even what is it, -4 for invisibility? I mean, that's not as bad as you think it is. But I think the other part of it is, like you said, I hear all the time of players never surrender. Well, there's nothing that says 0 hit points has to kill them. You can always just tell them after the fact that it's subdual damage, and you find yourself in the prison. And I agree with you. Is if you're going through this whole thing and you, unless you let players know in advance, hey, look, guys, this is going to go on. I don't mind it too much, but I agree with you. This is an unbeatable encounter. Well, then why are we even playing it? Why don't you just narrate it? Yeah. That's the way I feel about it. Just narrate. This is not.
I don't know if it's a D&D thing or a fantasy thing, but I've learned the hard way from running superhero games over the years. Don't put the players in prison. Don't capture and put them in a jail cell. Jesus Christ. Like nothing you want to achieve in any scene after that will be valid, because everything will be, how the fuck do I get out of this cell? And they'll just obsess with, like, at least my players have. And it's like, I learned the hard way. Don't do that to my players.
Well, captivity is one of the things players hate in any system.
Things with A4, they're not actually in a cell or anything. They are it's framed as being they are pretty much sacrifices to the monster in the slave lords believe is in the mountain that is causing the eruption. So they've been thrown in as a sacrifice to that. They're left to fend with. They're expected to die in there. They're left to fend with for themselves. But the adventure provides 3 or 4 different routes out of it, and it's all to do with players being clever. They've got to swim underwater for a long way, for example, in one bit, but there are reeds they can find. You can make torches out of bundled little bits of wood, and there's a little pool of pitch in one place. You can find a way of lighting it. You can get light and find your way around.
It's a time module too, as you only have so long to do it. But the other thing that comes into it is, again, you're right. Is if they're in jail, the only thing is they focus about how to getting out. Well, that's why you get the whole discussion thing, which is in there, which is, it's kind of railroady. But again, if it's organically in there, okay, look, the king throws you in jail, and now he gives you an option. Or so and so comes by and says, if you help me with this, I'll release you. Which, to be fair, as I'm reading some of the old pulp stuff, whether it's John Carter or Conan or some of the other stuff that came from the 1930s and 20s for writing, I think that was where a lot of this came from. And I'm okay with it if you let me know that we're going to play kind of a pulp aspect game. If we're playing a really gritty game, then that's very different for me. But then the other part is, if it's an unstoppable thing, then just narrate it. Let players know, okay, we decided to do this. Well, okay, we're going through here, get you to the story. And I know everyone talks about sandbox. And don't get me wrong, I love sandbox. I don't have to do crap in sandbox. Like, oh, here's a map. Go for it, and then I'll just roll along. That makes it really easy.
I don't know any players who won't try to stop your narration to act, to do something. The moment you say, "Oh, the creature's doing this," they go, "Okay, well, I want to do this." It's no, stop and listen to what I'm saying. No, we don't want to get caught or whatever. They will try to interrupt that narration to be able to act.
Well, no. My point being is that they already know that it's going to be this, and say, "Hey, we're going to go narrate." Yeah, you have to prep the players for it,
right?
That's what I'm saying. And the players have to. If the players like, no, we want 100% control, go for it. You get 100%, or if they, like I said, as I'm getting older, look, I don't. There are times when I've said, someone else roll the dice for me. I don't care. I'm okay with the DM rolling the dice for me. If the DM says, you know what, it'd be awesome if you actually fail this roll, I'm okay with it. As long as I can make my choose your own adventure, choices, I'm all right. I don't have to really care what's going through there. And I was like, all right, let me just play the story. And if I make a bad choice, it burns me, but you can do all the rolls, you can hide it, you can do everything else. But that said is, if you're going into, everyone talks about railroads. I kind of like the highway system. Look, here's a highway, and there are exits, and you can go off from the exits. But you have to follow up from point A to point B from one city to the next. Once you get to the next city, then we'll branch off. I think the worst dick move is when the DM gives you like 7 hooks, and you ignore all of them, and then say, "Well, I'm bored." Kill you.
That's obviously a player issue. I mean, the point of the stream is DM dick moves, really. But that's just frustrating. That's just sort of player you don't want to have in your group, to be honest.
The other part is that I'd like players to actually initiate things, and then they tell me, from my perspective, tell me what you want to do, and then allow me 1 or 2 sessions to actually incorporate that into the game. But don't do this where, oh, this sounds cool today, and then tomorrow it's like, I'm bored. Let's do something else. Oh, you made me waste hours of prep time. I'm going to kill you.
That's why I don't prep.
Wait a minute. Then it's the quantum dungeon.
Yep.
We're back to that point where Sax just crack that.
But the thing is, as I've said before, I don't dungeon, right? Like I do more wilderness, plot-driven, story-driven, villain-driven, what have you type stuff. Sorry, I'm just eating, guys. That's why I turned my camera off, so you don't have to see me chomping on food like a savage. It's the Canadian in me. But I don't dungeon. Okay, well, I'm going to do you a mitzvah right now, my friend. We'll know you're not for local when you call it poutine. It's poutine.
Well, you know what? Yeah. I'm an American, damn it. I embrace it.
Then you have a bad grasp of English, because Poutine should be poutine if you're pronouncing it as spelled.
Right. I'm going to show you some. Hopefully this will present now. I want you to read through one of these encounters and tell me whether you think it's wrong.
Okay. Where is this happening?
It's going to be happening on the screen.
Okay.
Okay. Start from G5, Satter's Wood.
Oh, dear God. I can't even read that.
All right. As 4 setters live in this area. Okay. Oh, which can charm, sleep, or cause fear. All right.
Okay. Specifically, it's the last bit.
The small heaps of grass are the setter's beds. Everything is as it seems, and the cask containing quality wine. If surprised,
Keep going.
if they're not surprised, they will conceal themselves in a shrubbery.
A shrubbery.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I
Shrubbery.
see that.
Using the
I see where they take away the female party members with 15 charisma.
Yeah, well, they're counterpoints to dryads.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the reason I put that up is those sort of encounters are they can be a bit of a touch paper because it depends on how the DM portrays satyrs in the world. But how familiar are you with the original Greek inspiration of the satyr?
Are you talking about with the constant phallic erects? You know?
Exactly.
Yep.
And they charm away beautiful female members with 15 plus charisma. What do you read into that?
It looks like you're having sadder babies.
Dungeon erotica.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how do you think players of female characters might feel about that encounter?
Eroded?
That's an official adventure. That's Beyond the Crystal Cave. That's UK1.
Well,
Yes,
you
I've
know
read
what?
that
You know
one.
what though is I'm going to mention this is because even if you look at the old Greek myths, there was a lot of this going on, and I hate saying this is people are like, oh, I'm a fan. You don't have to make everything graphic, but man, people seem to forget that the old, when they did all this D&D, if you read the old literature in the Greek mythology and stuff, you kind of know what to expect from this, and it's not. That's sometimes where I think that this modern era wants everything to be young adult. And you go, man, did you actually read what's going on with the old Greek mythology? And hell, I'm trying to start reading, what's it called? Well, there are two things. One is Bloody Spears, which that's actual real life. But then the other one was trying to read
Percy
Paradise
Jackson.
Lost. Well, Paradise Lost, and then just all the old Greek mythology. A lot of the old Greek mythologies where they stole so and so, and then she fell in love, with the whatever. Well, even Hercules didn't he steal his wife with the centaur? I can't remember. It's been years. There's a centaur that grabbed his wife and ran off with her, and he's chasing her down.
I know Zeus was certainly known for.
Yeah. Yeah. Shower of gold. What? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that one up to show that there are these some of the old adventures do have these sort of little moves
That's
in
the
there.
equality women are pining for, because the same thing would happen with the dryad and the male characters.
That's right.
Everything is equal. Everybody gets a chance to be taken away by the fey creatures and have years of sex. Everybody gets a fair try.
Well, you know what? Well, here's the other thing. Who are the only characters that have the high charisma? 15 charisma, which most people seem to use as a dump stat, except the paladin.
And druids. Druids will have a 15 minimum.
Oh yeah. Well, but it says that they'll be nice to druids specifically in here.
It does. If you've got a female paladin in the party, well, hey,
Well, if the druid's 7th level, they're immune to the charm anyway. But
You ever seen that Corman movie, Sorcerer, about the twins?
no.
Playmate models. So of course they spend most of the movie half naked, and the whole plot line is that they're disguised as boys, but they, Jesus Christ, they make an effort. You know what I mean? There's a satyr character introduced in that movie as their comedic relief sidekick. He has no dialogue. He just makes this bleating noise all the time, and they fully lean into the trope of satyr equals hormonal teenager, just. And I saw that when I was young on VHS, and when I started playing D&D, or after I saw that playing D&D, I was like, I will never use this creature in one of my campaigns ever, because it's just so, just ew. It's just, there's a high level ick factor to it, One for me. I mean, I'm not faulting anybody who does, but for me, I was like, no, I'm good.
Well, I don't know if you guys have played The Witcher 3, where they have. Well, to be fair, you have the succubus. If you look at, there's lots of dryads, succubi. There's all sorts of things to, draw horny teenagers away, that were players, and just go, yeah, but you don't understand what really comes with this. And what was it? There was in one of the Dragon magazines. If John ever gets up into the hundreds here, you're slacking there, John. You need to make one video for the Dragon magazine, so we can get past it, more than year 6. But no, but there's one from what's the Lian Chi or whatever it was it was the basically encourages and just grabs bards and then sucks all of their creative juices out of them. Yeah, well,
but I don't mind monsters that seduce and kill you.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. It's the satyr doesn't kill you. Like, that's the point. He doesn't lure you off like a naiad to drown you, or like a dryad to give you the fairies. Or
seduction
whatever.
and murder is okay, but just seduction is not.
Well, no, because it's not the seduction. It's what comes after the seduction with the satyr, and it's a forced seduction, right? It's not it's not like ooh, a goat man. That was exactly what my kink was today. No, it's like
It's most certainly adult content, absolutely, and I think you really do need to know your group.
Right? Oh boy, boy. Now, I've mentioned Oglaf before. If you're underage, please don't Google this page. They did a great one with the naiads, where they had a female paladin show up in the woods and find a pool of naiads, and like, oh my god, come hang out with us. And she's like, no, you're just going to drown me. And they're like, oh, actually, we're done for the day. We were just going to do each other's hair, hang out, and like watch a movie. And she's like, oh my god, that sounds great. And then the next panel is her drowned with all the naiads standing around her, like.
well, you had that one. Well, you had the old, of course, depending where you were, the old mermaids that would seduce and then drown. I mean, there's a lot of the succubus doesn't necessarily kill you. It enslaves you. I mean, she enslaves you for that kind of thing, and there's all sorts of them in there with the Irenes. I mean, if you actually look at some of these are vengeance kind of things, and you go, well, that's. But not everything has to be on screen.
Quite.
A lot of times,
exactly.
That's why I think that some of it comes down to what happens, but
I would never force my players to that's a bridge too far for me.
Sure.
Even if you fail to save, I'm not going to force you into an intimate encounter against your will.
That's when you do this in the game. That's when you do this in the game.
Oh, here we go. What's he got?
Yeah, fade to black.
Exactly, but even then, only if it's by choice they're going along with it. I was running a Marvel campaign set in the Marvel universe one time, and all the heroes were drawn together, and I use whimsy cards, and one of them is the romance card, which is you play it and you start a romantic relationship with an NPC, blah 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 blah. And we were playing, and all the heroes had been called together by Reed Richards to talk about something, and the X-Men show up, and one of the players like, is Rogue there? And I'm like, yeah. And like they got into a fight over who was going to play the romance card, because one guy had a wild card, the other guy was waiting for that guy to drop the romance card so he could play the master plan, pick it up and play it. It was like insane. These 3 grown-ass men suddenly were just obsessing about the idea that they could potentially have their character hook up with Rogue. And I'm like, y'all remember the part where she can't touch
anybody.
Right? Like you can't make physical contact with this person. Like, that's her power, right? And
body condoms are a thing.
But the point is that I think, and you'd said something earlier, I think it was Sean had said it about the female player in that situation. Yeah. I think male players react to that stuff tremendously differently, because I did run a game with mostly female players at the table, and they wound up in a fairyland, and things got a little, and all the girls were happy because it followed a narrative where it was their choice and they were enjoying it and they were happy with it, right? That satyr thing, I hate to use the modern vernacular, but it's problematic,
Well, I'm going to mention one other thing. Is you're assuming that, we can say it implies certain things, but it could also be, yes, but they haven't done anything with her yet while you go rescue her.
It could be taking her to make pie. It's true.
Yeah.
Well, and you can definitely PG-13 it. Okay, yeah, the satyrs they charm and take away the ladies, but because they want to maintain the purity of the ladies they've taken away, they're taking their taking them away to protect them from sexual deviancy. Like, I mean,
Or
it's a
offer
stretch
them
that
to
goes.
the unicorn. Offer them to the unicorn.
Yeah, or whatever. It's another task. That the charm, the effect is they've been removed from the game.
Do they
Which
get a
is,
saving throw though?
of
Because that
course.
didn't imply they get a saving throw because the charm was lowercase c.
Well,
Well, that's their ability. The charm referencing their ability. The
Okay.
standard saving throw.
Well,
But the point is they're removed from the game. You don't have to go into the detail of what happens when they're removed.
Not quite exactly.
No.
And the question is, how long are you doing that? That's the other part. The other thing is, when we talk about, look at charm. What is the intelligence if you're a 10? How often do you get a saving throw for that?
I think it's every 3 weeks.
Something like that. Well, I mean, there's some of them. It's like 5
It's
years.
permanent.
You're
Some
really
is
done.
permanent. Like a Naga charm is permanent. You have to break it. You have to dispel it. But otherwise, it's permanent. There's no duration.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah, elf bait. I mean, there's all sorts of things we can go for, but the point that I would have for it is, it's just like we were watching a movie where that was implied is what would happen. Well, then that gives you a time counter. You have to go rescue her by X time, and that's what the other part comes down to. That said, is what kind of party wouldn't fight the satyrs if they're taking away your females? That's the other part that comes into it. It's like, hey.
If you ever play that adventure, you'd understand why fighting anything in that garden's not a good idea.
No, it's really not. By the way, Squirrel Hermit, you're right. Jibaro is one of the best of the second season Love, Death, and Robots shorts. It's fantastic. Have you guys seen that one?
Mm-mm.
It's where the guy comes across the gem-encrusted, jewel-encrusted naiad, and it's all about that scene. It's amazing. It's absolutely like it's what things like Lamentations of the Flame Princess aspire to for the darkness of what it is all about, and it's really well done. Lots of inspiration there for D&D.
Jibaro, what's this? I don't know what Jibaro is.
So there was a series on Netflix called Love, Death, and Robots where they did a bunch of shorts, some sci-fi, some fantasy, some horror, some whatever. This is one of the shorts that they did, and it's absolutely astounding.
Okay.
And it's got a very strong, I don't know if it's North African or Middle Eastern feel to it, but it has that sort of like not European fantasy feel to it using a traditional European monster. It's really interesting. It's really well done.
Well, I mean,
Saying I should watch it after this stream's finished.
Absolutely.
if I didn't have to pay for Netflix, I'd be okay.
I'm sure you can find it somewhere out there in the high seas. It's Spanish. It's Moorish Spain, I think, Manfred. I think that's the point. Like, it's Spanish, but it's like the Moorish conquest of Spain period, I think. Anyway, neither here nor there.
Well, some of the other things you can do. You want to talk about, quote, your things that you can use against your players. Let's not forget fatigue and encumbrance.
But none of those are dick moves. No, those are standard parts of the
Standard
game.
rules.
Well,
Yeah.
Using,
Well, yeah, but that's what we're talking about. Is we're saying that those are ways to get them. The other one, of course, is we talked about encumbrance, but let's not forget environmental hazards such as having to cross rivers or being on a boat while being factored into the encumbrance.
Mm-hmm. No, all that's great stuff. Especially, when they find a massive treasure hoard of loose coins. Did anybody bring sacks? Can't we just say we bought them? No.
My favorite question: how are you carrying all this shit out?
Yeah.
Well, I think my favorite is you see that it's under the water, but they can't bring it up. It's like, well, how are you going to bring that up? Like,
Does floating disc work underwater?
Well, it floats. You just can't go into water. So there's that, and then the other one is, well, until you get water breathing, you're like, no. Well, you can swim down and you can pick up a little bit and then come back up at a time, and just.
How long can you hold your breath? That's the question I have for you, Steve.
What about cursed items?
Love them.
Yep.
Love them.
I'm going to bring up a cursed item I like, but I want to get as a player I wouldn't mind having, which is the one of arrow attraction.
if you've got a really good armor class, it's fine.
Yeah, you draw all the arrows to you and save your teammates.
Yeah, exactly. It's everyone views it as a cursed item, but it can really work in your party's favor.
Can be used in your favor, yeah. Especially if you can have the curse part removed where you want to use the item, right? So it's voluntary. I actually did. Okay, here's a dick move I did. I think I've mentioned this on the past. Because I roll my treasures randomly from my players. I don't curate it. It's like whatever the dice land, that's what they get. And one time they got a +5 broadsword. And so I didn't curse it, but I did add lore to this weapon, because really high magic weapons, I always give a history. And the history was that this weapon was cursed, that whoever wielded it would attract challengers. And so, because the last few owners had died in duels. So there was no actual tangible curse. It was just reputation. But the players were paranoid. They kept it bundled up and hidden away until they really, really needed it. They refused to use it.
Is that so bad? Well, I mean, we're talking about cursed items. I had a friend of mine who wanted to make it so the player was obsessed with some daggers. And the player was becoming obsessed because just the way he was describing these jewel-encrusted daggers. I think the problem is everyone they look at the mechanical aspect of it, rather than, to me, the worst ones are like the sword of Berserk, the Berserk sword.
I was going to mention that one. I was going to mention that one. Yeah, the Berserking sword. Yes.
Well, and then what is the other cursed item, which is the one of sex change? Where you put the girdle of
the belt
change.
of
It's not a curse anymore. That's just topical.
Oh.
Yeah.
What are these? No.
Yeah, let's go back to the berserking sword. Yes.
Let's get away from the girdle of gender swapping.
Yeah. The berserking sword is it's a lot of fun, isn't it? it's a lot of fun.
But I mean,
make it as appealing as possible.
I think sometimes some of them are, we look at cursed items, but I kind of like the ones that are the dual edge cursed items, which is why I was mentioning intelligent swords, where if you aren't following their agenda, they'll take over your character over time. And that to me gets really interesting for that, is because that allows you to get the story aspect. And especially when they get those other powers in there. I guess the other question is, has anyone ever used any artifacts?
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
Yeah.
The what is it? The one where you put the teeth in slowly.
The teeth of Dalvanar. That's the one I used. Yes.
Yeah. No, I used what was it? The rod of lordly might or something like that. The rod of control or power. Anyway, I can't remember the exact name, but when I rolled up the random side effects, one was that the main power was, of course, you activate it and everybody around you is in awe of you. But if you're not activating it, the side effect was if you had it in your hand, everybody around you wanted to attack you to take possession. Oh. So if you didn't know how to activate that power to get everybody complacent, you got dogpiled.
Yes. But I left the one which was it costs or whatever, where you start adding parts to your body, and those are all. I think the artifacts were actually a lot more interesting in D&D than the basic magic items. They really did add fun.
From the Hilt has mentioned my favorite magic item in existence.
I disagree with it.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Wait. How does that differ from my normal player?
It doesn't. Anyway, I've another. I'm going to bring up another bit from an adventure, and it's one of the most widely run adventures of all time. A little snippet right at the end of it, and I don't know whether you've run it or not. I don't know, but I just share screen again. I'm so slow tonight. That's you, Mage, isn't it?
That's me. Yeah, I live on a major thoroughfare, so there's a lot of sirens and people revving their engines and all that good stuff.
I thought you just lived in a really bad neighborhood.
I live in Scarborough, so if you know Toronto, that's not a nice place. Toronto's New Jersey.
Okay. All right. I don't know if you can see this okay. The last paragraph of this, one of the most famous adventures of all time.
Yes, the village of Hamlet.
It is indeed. It is indeed.
All right, what are we looking at? And
The last paragraph.
the very last one. Okay, credits, layout.
No, the one above that.
You just mad about Gen Con. No, but okay.
The 10th level assassin. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh yes.
Now, is this the first? Oh, this is T1. So you're only talking about a second or third level character. I mean,
Yes.
that I don't like, because it's like, oh, all of a sudden an assassin in 10th level will show up, and you're like, well, wait a minute, why does it have to be such a high level? I'll tell you, the worst one was when you do the after you play the super module of Against the Slavers, and then you go into the against the giant one.
Mm-hmm.
There are tons of 9th level, like you're in a tavern and then suddenly all these 9th level fighters attack you. I said, well, first off, where'd you get all these 9th level fighters? It's, we're talking like Lord level.
That was one of the problems with the super modules, is they added those sort of things that weren't in the original adventures.
Well, it made no sense either. There was a reason you started going to more powerful non-human monsters.
Yes.
So it didn't feel like, how do I put this? So it felt like when you were at 9th level, you were one of the very few. That's one of the reasons I like DMing games. If you look at the list, it tells you on how many people are at each level. And it's like, well, 10th level, that's like every eon or so players are at that level.
Let me tell you. I'll tell you how I ran this when my group, when we ran through Temple of Elemental Evil. And this was about 13 years ago. I had seeded Loreth, and Loreth's assassin was his consort, the 10th level assassin. They were in Hamlet the whole time. They had gotten to know the group. So when it was a Scooby-Doo ending when they took down Loreth and they unmasked him, and it was like, what? You? Because they had made friends with him. And they never figured out. Now, what ended up happening was the Loreth was of noble blood, so he demanded trial by combat in his hometown, and one of the group was actually of noble blood himself, and the other was a paladin, so we have to honor it. We have no choice. It's the law of the land. So Loreth ended up getting off scot-free, but the assassin was his consort, so they already knew her. They already knew, but they didn't know she was an assassin, of course. So the presence of that character was seeded, and then they started getting suspicious of any of Loreth's contacts, any of Loreth's friends, because it's, wait a sec, who are his secret allies? So that's how I handled that. The assassin was there, never ended up having to attack the group because they defeated him, but they didn't kill him. But it had been seeded.
Yeah, well, that's a fair way of handling it. But a 10th level assassin is going to be that to me. I never used it. I didn't do it when I ran this adventure. I didn't do this. But then my players didn't manage to kill him at the end of this adventure. They killed him about 5 months later in terms of the campaign, when they were all now 3rd or 4th level. I had them meet him somewhere else. So anyway.
Well, the other aspect, and Slan makes a point here: if the party kills off Loreth and the other denizens of the dungeon, how would anyone know? I mean, characters are likely going to brag about it or go for a reward, but that's also true. If there's no reason, the DM needs to adjudicate fairly. If there's no reason for the Loreth's allies to know that they're the ones who did it, then there should be no assassin. I mean, the assassin comes, I think it's mentioned there, right there. And if any of his possessions turn up, the slayers will be known, right? So you gotta play that aspect of it too.
Yeah.
But I think it also goes back to what I was saying earlier about this era of D&D felt so combative and so antagonistic between the players and the DMs. That just seems like, and then this assassin shows up and I'd be like, well, like whatever. It doesn't feel, I don't know. I'm more narrative, I guess.
Well, and the module's only telling you this is what happens. It's not telling you how you have to do it. And you don't just have to have an assassin show up out of the blue and roll an assassination table. Oh, look, your character's dead. You can seed it. You can make a story out of it. You can have the assassin show up asking questions, looking around, leave hints and clues, and make a session or two out of it too. So that can be interesting.
Could lead you to the slavers.
Yeah, or wherever you want to go. Yeah, see
Yeah,
other
what if the
adventures.
assassin captures your one of your players and sells them off.
Mhm.
And
So
now you're
yeah,
on
so
that
you don't
rescue.
you don't just have to have the assassin show up and start murdering player characters. You can
I
make
just,
an
I just
adventure.
says eliminate the offenders, which to me means kill.
Right,
But-
right. Well, that could be their intent, but I'm just saying you don't just say, okay, the guys, there's an assassin in town. I'm going to roll Omanel. I'm going to roll to see if they kill you. Oh, you're alive. Bear, I'm going to roll to see. Yeah, doing it that way would absolutely be stupid.
No,
You
no,
can
no,
make
no, no.
role
I'm
play
thinking,
out of it.
Yeah, you're role playing while he slowly tries figuring out where you're alone, takes you out that way, and,
Mhm.
and the players are getting to this murder mystery. I mean, it could, but to be fair, T1 was a module I never saw, and by the time I actually saw it, it was T1 through 4. I was like, what happened to T2 and 3?
Yeah.
I don't know. I never liked the module at all. Reading it wasn't fun. It just I just hated it. I thought that there were so much better modules out there for beginning players.
My run through of Village of Hamlet and Temple of Elemental Evil. Village of Hamlet was a raging success. They loved it. They were set there. There were other. I always do what I do. I seed other modules and adventures. They were there for years. When they finally rolled up to the Temple of Elemental Evil, they looked at each other and went nope and walked away. That was the end of it.
Well, I mean, you 1, 2, and 3 are very good. I like L1. That was very good. The Keep on the Borderlands. There are several really good first level modules. And Temple of Hamlet, I don't know. Well, to be fair, the only time I saw it wasn't a T1 through 4 module, so I looked at it as a whole thing. And I went, this doesn't seem fun. That's and that's what some of it to me comes down to. Is as a DM, I wanted a module to be as much fun to read as it is to play. That's one of the reasons that I think that the Isle of the Plangent Mage is such a good adventure. For anyone that has OSE, that's what I recommend. I haven't looked at the other one, which is Hole in the Oak, and
Hole in the
I've
Oak is
heard
great.
pretty good.
I've played it twice and I've seeded it in my OSE game, but nobody's taken the bait yet. Actually, they tried to find it once, then ended up falling into bickering and PvP, and then ended up going back to the keep. So they never even got to the Hole in the Oak. And the one character with the map leading to the oak hasn't played in a while. So, but he's the one with the treasure map. So it's, unless he rejoins, it's pretty much out.
We do, of course, have the ultimate dick move that a DM can ever pull on his or her players.
Quitting the game.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking.
Get out of the box.
Oh.
Out of the box.
I have run this a sum total of once, and it actually
Oh my God,
CPK'd the
dude.
group.
Dude, I'm digging for it right now. I'm literally going through my box to find where I put my copy because I have a plan to redeem this module.
There's an old saying that if I have to do more work than it would be to me start from scratch, then I'm not using it.
I rewrite everything anyway. It doesn't bother me.
Well, then you say you don't prep. Yeah, that's what I have. That's what
No,
I'm
I don't prep like here's all my NPCs,
Yeah.
here's all my
yeah.
things, here's the thing. No, I prep like this is the story, this is what we're gonna be doing, here's some
Sure.
locations I'm gonna hit. But I don't run I don't, as a general rule, run published adventures. I always find they end poorly.
I'm the opposite. I run so many published modules, and they help me because I don't have a lot of time. I can read over it, and I'm good to go.
Aha!
There you are.
Oh my God, he has it actually in like a.
Oh yes, thank
It's
you.
still a
eBay.
collectible.
Thank you, eBay. $5. I got it for $5. It's in great shape.
You
Oh,
know
they
what?
paid you to take it, right?
I want to run this, but I want to. Okay, cat, it's not for you. I want to edit it. There's a cat right here bumping his head against the module as hard as he can, like he's all about playing this one. I've read a couple of blog articles where some people have sort of, well, here's things you can change to fix it up and make it run a bit more smoothly and less stupidly. Like there's just stuff you can do with it. But the thing is that it's just got such a bad reputation. It appeals to me, like I'm like,
These situations can be fixed easily. It's some of it is kind of dumb, but the real painful part about it is just reading the module.
So
the way
bad.
the way they use the language and the contradictions. But like okay. The basic scenario, like the naiad, or is it a naiad or the dryad or whatever, the nymph? It was a nymph who has put the sleeping magic, and it's like, wait, none of this makes sense.
I need you to do this. Why don't you just do it your own?
Well, do it yourself. Yeah, it's like so. But as a DM, you just put in rational reasons why she can't do it. It all works. The situation can work.
Yeah.
And that's a simple fix.
But this is
yeah,
a Corman film of an adventure.
Oh, jeez.
This is like if Roger Corman funded a module. That's what's so bad about it. It's so bad it's good. There's so much potential wasted.
We should do a fake trailer. Roger Corman's the Forest Oracle.
I'm just thinking, does it have enough breasts in it, for Roger Corman?
Well, there's
a nymph.
Or nymph, yeah.
I'm just thinking of how, what was it? There's Battle Beyond the Stars, which is bad.
The ship has boobs.
Yeah, but no, but I do see you have Dark Sun in the back, which I know that Geek doesn't like. So
I don't mind Dark Sun.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Oh,
I don't mind. I don't mind the setting. I didn't like the adventures that came out for it. They were very linear.
Okay.
But the setting was fine.
Oh, I thought that you didn't like the setting overall. So I thought okay.
Jeez, the guy says one critical thing about it, and suddenly he hates the whole thing.
Dude, that happened to me on my channel. I mentioned that I wasn't a big fan of the way people envisioned Conan because it was like substituting masculinity by thinking Conan was the virtue of masculinity, and therefore there's this whole group of guys who, they think that's manhood. And I'm like, you realize you're taking manhood advice from a guy who shot himself in the head. I mean, come on. And literally the next thing was, why do you hate Conan?
I've read Conan. I finally got through all of the stories of Conan from Robert E. Howard, and I was like, oh, okay. It's just your typical, yeah, okay, fine. He's very masculine for that. It's not anything but I don't understand why this whole I don't know. I enjoyed reading the Conan stuff, but I enjoyed reading John Carter too. So
as long as you didn't define your life after reading the Gore novels by John Norman, you should be okay.
I don't know. I never read those. I heard that those were good at the beginning, and then they just tanked.
They start off real good, and then they just suddenly become his obsessive slave culture. It's like, what the hell? Bondage, slave culture. That's what the whole Gorian movement is about now. It's all about this whole perverse subculture. It's like dark furries or something. It's really
neat. I mean, I keep saying this is most of my games I want to play are PG-13, PG to PG-13.
Crafting game, it's to be expected. It's for middle-aged nerds. What are we going to be interested in?
Well. See, the problem is that John doesn't like science fiction. If he did, we could go a lot further down this road.
Never forget that Battle Beyond the Stars. Okay, here's something. It's a little bit of a sidetrack, but it's an interesting thing. Battle Beyond the Stars is the Magnificent Seven.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So much so that Robert Vaughn repeats his character in the two movies. The Magnificent Seven is Seven Samurai.
Right.
Yeah. I want to run the fantasy campaign version of it.
You know what, though, it's
an easy setup, though.
It's an easy setup. You just need either have the NPC be the villager that comes to find the seven heroes and they be the players, or you get that really good role player in your group who can play that villager and then run into a mix of PCs and NPCs that'll be the seven heroes.
That can be your Against the Dark Master campaign.
I've got that already planned. Sorry.
Well, I mean, that's a classic one where if you have a good set of characters where they can't say no. And I mean, it's such a classic thing. And, hey, look, guys, we've got this poor village being attacked. And I think they did that in H1. H1 was the D&D version of that.
Bloodstone Pass?
Yeah.
Really? Never read it.
Bloodstone Pass, if you look at it, they're asked to help this group, this like village from the attacking, marauding. The treasure isn't great. I mean, it matches it. That was the feeling I got from it when I read it when I was 14, and I haven't read it since. But But I think that's but you're right. It's one of these things that, however you want to look at it, is even if you have a small group, and they Hawk the Giant Slayer did the exact same thing. You go
By the
out.
way, Grumpy Old Slan, you're right. I did forget A Bug's Life. That is also the same story.
Well, that's, but that's what I mean. Is when all of a sudden, like, well, you know what? We need to grab some more heroes. Let's go find more heroes around. And I mean, they use it for everything from Crawl to
Krull. Okay, I won't hear anybody bad talk Krull. No bad talk.
Krull is delicious cheese.
It is.
From the
And
hill.
actually, if you read the original script, it's a D&D script. The origin of Krull was a Dungeons and Dragons movie, and if you read the original script, there's none of the sci-fi. It's all fantasy.
It's all
well, let's be honest. If you actually look at the old D&D, it had plenty of sci-fi in there. They didn't recognize any difference. That's why whenever people go like, "I want Tolkien D&D," I'm like, if you actually read the original Dungeons and Dragons, they talk about green Martians. Martians are from John Carter. That's sci-fi.
Barrier Peaks. That Expedition to the Barrier Peaks is nothing but sci-fi.
Oh yeah,
that's why I never run it.
Well, even one of them, what was it? Was it Sagar the Barbarian or whatever? The one that Gygax kind of did that was in his Greyhawk setting for the Choose Your Own Adventure. But you had dice and stuff. Well, they actually talk about certain ones in there, and you can see where the like the golems and things, like they had like an ice golem or crystal golems. They're really sci-fi monsters than anything else. You're like, oh, okay.
There's a lot of really cool aspects or bits of sci-fi movies, especially from the 70s, that you can port into a D&D campaign and just reskin it as fantasy, like the ice caves from Logan's Run.
Mm-hmm.
That is a fantastic thing to put your players up against in a fantasy idea, of this weird ice elemental that's like collecting people as they escape this empire or whatever. You can do something really fun with that. I've always said Sandal Berman's She, 1984 She. Mm-hmm. You take out the post-apocalyptic and just make it hardcore fantasy, and that would be a fantastic campaign.
Well, She was based on the Rider Haggard book, and that was meant to be like 18th century or 19th century Africa. Yeah.
Well, even if anyone's read The Dying Earth is science fiction with fantasy in there. They even talk about having cars and other stuff in there, and I think that some of it is that at the time, we're going to talk about it in the 70s, the difference between fantasy and sci-fi, there was no real difference for how most of them looked at it.
It was called science fiction fantasy, right? That was the whole category. They were merged together. It's really not, I think, until the late 80s, early 90s when you start seeing the hard divide between the two of them. And I think ultimately in 77 we got the most fantasy sci-fi ever, which was Star Wars. Star Wars is a fantasy story in space.
I thought they even do Ralph Bakshi's Wizards.
Wizards, yeah.
Wizards is one of the best movies ever made, man. I'll fight you on that. It's a great film. Or you
want my mother back, you son of a bitch.
I'm glad you changed your name.
I have to completely disagree with my D&D because, of course, I'm a Brit who went to the same school as Tolkien, came into D&D as through reading The Hobbit and playing fighting fantasy, Warlock of Firetop Mountain, City of Thieves, Forest of Doom, not the sci-fi ones. So my D&D has always been
Gatekeeper.
My D&D. Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm very similar to John on this, which is stop mixing my peanut butter with your chocolate. But yes, I am somewhat in there, and I'm somewhat not. I don't mind. I like having the Thundar the Barbarian aspects to it. If I'm going to be playing Thundar the Barbarian game, but normally for my D&D is I actually like the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay for its setting, which is Renaissance Europe, which you get. I don't mind having the firearms, but your firearm is probably worse than the bow. It's like you get one shot, and now you bring out your sword. You get the Three Musketeer aspect from it. And I'm okay with that. What I don't like is the I want to call it the Old West. Once you start going up into the repeating rifles and stuff, and that's that.
By the way, Crafting Gamer, that's Cull you're thinking of, the Kevin Sorbo film where he defeats the demon with the ice breath. That's Cull.
No. We're talking Kroll, which is the
We're talking Crow, which is the greatest, most underappreciated 80s fantasy film ever made.
I own my copy. I watch it regularly.
I watched Kroll recently.
But I like Cull as well. Cull is a lot of fun.
I haven't watched Kroll. I did watch, but with Kroll, I did have that. But Kroll is D&D. It has mixed the science fiction fantasy with the.
Oh yeah.
You know.
It's pure cheese. It's but it's good cheese. It's a fine brie. It's fun to watch. It's like Call the Conqueror is bad. Is an objectively bad film, but I love it. It's fun.
It's like the one that I can't stand that everybody loves is Hawk the Slayer. Everyone like, oh, Hawk the Slayer. I watch Hawk the Slayer straight, and I'm like, this is garbage. And then I watched it with riff tracks, and I'm like, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. Is Hawk the Slayer? Is I watched it once. It was bad, but it was a fun bad. It's like watching a lot of the, which is of course John didn't do this, but this is why I think I love the Oriental Adventures. Was watching the old Chinese style kung fu. And I don't mean just the regular kung fu, but we're talking about where they flew up 20 feet up in the air, and they had the monsters and demons.
Ye old geek, John. I'll give you some props because I know you're a patriotic Brit. The problem I have with Hawk the Slayer is that the American actors are god awful, including Jack Palance, who's just eating the scenery. But they're surrounded by all these other actors who are like British, and they're all like clearly formerly trained, and they bring gravitas to every line. It's like they clearly don't understand which movie they're in, so they're playing it straight and professional, and they're amazing to watch. But they're in Hawk the Slayer. It's kind of like,
let's see what are some other moves that you can do. Oh, let's not forget.
Of course, all the best bad guys throughout film history have had English accents.
Well, even the Nazis have English accents if you go back into the 70s sometimes, right?
Yeah. Well, greatest bad guys ever. I mean, King John in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Brilliant bad guy. Alan Rickman plays the best bad guys in history.
Hans Gruber, baby.
I'm pretending to be a German, even though I'm not. No, I will say this much is because a lot of them were theater trained. The cast of Dune from 1984.
I love that movie.
I thought they did a fantastic job, and I like the long version, which they didn't show until it was in the TV, but the theatrical version was. You could tell they just cut too much out of it.
Well, the full cut's 6 hours long, but that's beside the point.
He was the Sheriff of Nottingham, wasn't he? Not King John.
Yes, he was the Sheriff of Nottingham. Who played Prince John in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves?
Nobody. There was no Prince John. It was Guy of Gisborne and Sheriff of Nottingham. Sheriff was Alan Rickman. Guy of Gisborne was Michael Wincott.
Now, best Robin Hood. I say the old BBC show from the 80s.
The one with Patrick Bergen?
Michael Pratt,
yeah.
Okay, I know which one you're talking about. Patrick Bergen did one in late 80s, early 90s. Uma Thurman was Maid Marian.
I saw that one. I'm going to say this much: is my favorite actor probably for bad guys. Well, there are two. One, of course, is James Earl Jones in Conan, and then the other one is Max von Sydow.
Which one?
Max von
Sydow. In which film?
Yeah,
Masters of the Universe?
Doesn't matter what film he's in. He's always been great. I mean, I liked him as being the Merciless.
Yes. I like him as King Osric in Conan.
Yes.
He is so good in that role.
It doesn't matter what role he's in. I love Max von Sydow, and we're talking about the Seventh Seal. There were a lot of them.
Force Awakens.
Wait a minute, that wasn't Max von Sydow. That was
it was.
Wasn't that Christopher Lee or
no? Max von Sydow in the Force Awakens.
In Force Awakens was Max von Sydow in the opening scene.
I mean, he's good, but it's not like he doesn't steal the scene. The Exorcist, on the other hand,
yes.
I'm sorry. Well, I mean, sorry, we completely derailed on.
Sorry.
Well, we're in our rambling phase. Unless John has more topics to talk about, you got a half an hour.
Right. Well, you've gone through all my notes. So,
all right.
I'm sure.
So we're just rambling now.
All right, here's one. I'll throw one out. Favorite guilty pleasure fantasy film, like the one that it's bad, but you still love to watch it.
There's so many.
Yeah, so many. Well, I mentioned earlier, Cull the Conqueror. That's up there. But hold on.
That's up there for you.
Let me turn around and look at my collection while you guys discuss.
Oh, you're talking about that. Well, see, I'm trying to think of I'm trying to think of fantasy for some of these, and I have to go back. But are they really that bad? It's like
I've got one. It's not a terrible film, but I've got a very good reason for liking it, and that reason is Joanne Whalley Kilmer, and that's Willow.
Willow, yeah, Willow's a good film.
Well,
Yeah, I don't think Willow's
I
a
like
bad
Willow.
film.
no, I thought Willow was fine. What do you count Labyrinth in there?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's a bad film though.
No, I don't think it's a bad film either. I like Dark Crystal too.
Yeah, I
don't
like
think
that
that's
one.
a bad film.
I don't think
I'm
they
talking
count
about
as guilty
Beastmaster.
pleasures. Beastmaster,
The swordsman and the sorceress. Some of those Lucio Fulci ones from Italy. I'm talking about the ones that everyone knows are bad, but you'll still watch this one because it's so good.
Okay? If we're really going to do that, and I have to admit but I do like parts of it. Is Conan the Destroyer?
Yeah, why not? It's like the most Conan of the movies. It's the one that used closest to the source material.
It's bad, but I still enjoy it for some of its bad.
The promise I was kingdomed.
The Sword and the Sorcerer. That's a pretty bad one. All right, I gotta give that.
Wait a minute. Lady Hawk's a good one.
Lady Hawk, if they would just rescore the music, that weird 80s synth music. Otherwise, it's good. There's another one that I don't think qualifies as a guilty pleasure. It was a flop. I love The 13th Warrior.
Me too. 13th Warrior I thought was good. I actually
I
thought it was a good film.
John, you've never seen The 13th Warrior? Check it out.
It's
Beowulf. It's Beowulf. Yeah.
But it's the two things that are really amazing about it is it's Beowulf done realistically, so it's like not super fantastic. Yeah. And this is the thing I love more than anything else. Only natural lighting was used.
Oh, really? Wow.
He lit that film naturally, like whoa,
The book is one of my tops, like the Eaters of the Dead. I read it a couple years before the movie came out.
Oh,
there you go.
Is that your next one that you can do for your final fantasy thing, or the
so reading? John, your homework is to find the 13th Warrior and watch it for the next stream. Yes. The story behind it, I won't take up too much time, is so Michael Crichton back in the 70s was raving about Beowulf to a colleague or a friend, and his friend hated Beowulf, so they kind of made a bet. It's like, I bet you couldn't make Beowulf exciting, so he took the bet and wrote a book called Eaters of the Dead, which is really good. It's a really good book. And in the 90s, they made a movie. It has Antonio Banderas as the lead. Omar Sharif has a small role. Yeah. And you listen to Omar Sharif, he's like, he regretted doing that movie. It was so bad. I was like, no, you're missing it. But
the guy who played Vincent Van Gogh on Doctor Who is in it as well.
Yeah, Tony Curran. Yeah. Vladimir Kulich, he plays the Buvai, the Beowulf character.
Now, can I tell you something, Sean, you didn't know? Mm-hmm. When I auditioned for that film in Vancouver in the 90s, it was a Schwarzenegger vehicle, and he was supposed to be Buvai. That's what we were all told going into those auditions when we went in, because every actor who was over 6 feet and white in Vancouver auditioned for that film.
Yeah.
And then McTiernan, I think is the director, came in.
John McTiernan, yeah.
He just went, nope, I'm not using North American actors for these roles. And he went straight to Europe and started casting actual Scandi people.
I'm gonna try to think of, we're talking about certain films in there. Oh, how about Guilty Pleasure, which I watched it for the first time, and it's so bad, it's hilariously bad, it's worth watching. Is Battle? I think it's Battle Wizards.
The Stars?
No, it's Battle Wizards. It's a kung fu film.
Okay.
It's really bad, where they have like lasers shooting out of some of the guys' fingers, and they have one of the guys.
Listening, go on.
What's that?
I'm listening. Go on.
One of the guys, he loses his legs and wants revenge, and he's the bad guy, of course. And so they give him these chicken legs, which has the ability to extend outwards and like kick someone in the chest. And then my favorite part is the martial arts gorilla that they bring in as the Beast. There's a guy they put in a gorilla costume, and he's beating up our hero. with
Love it.
with martial arts.
Love it.
It's hilariously bad. Oh, Big Trouble in Little China. It's a great movie that you have to admit is bad. Yes, I don't know where that fits.
Big Trouble in Little China is amazing. Flesh and Blood is not a bad movie at all, Manfred. It's an amazing film. And Barbarian Brothers was the one I was going to pick, by the way. That is my favorite guilty pleasure of those bad 80s barbarian films. That one is so much fun.
I think my guilty pleasure is isn't quite fantasy. It's I'm not sure what you count it as, but it's Space Invaders.
That is comedy and it is hilarious.
Yeah.
You were going 3,000 miles per hour in a 45 zone. Oh man, there goes my insurance.
I just love the Jack Nicholson alien, when you're really just doing Jack. It's like
well, I like the Donut of Doom when they have all of the whenever everyone's coming out. Yeah, I mean that one's terrible. That one's terribly fun. What was the other one? If we're going to really miss it, I know it's a little bit different for The Last Starfighter. I still enjoy. I don't.
Okay, I literally did a live stream about how awesome this film is, and then capped it off by playing the concept trailer for The Last Starfighters, which is the sequel they want to do now, and they got the original team back on board, and they did a concept with concept art.
Oh wow!
Oh my god! And then they did the best thing possible, which is they took the theme song and made it better. The piece by slowing it down and making it more haunting. Oh, so good.
I'm trying to think of what were some of the, not that I cared for it, but my girlfriend at the time really did, was Xena Warrior Princess.
Mm-hmm. I've got the box set.
It
holds up nicely.
Legendary Journeys.
It wasn't my thing, but she's like, "Oh, it's so fantastic."
Xena's interesting. I'm rewatching it, and it's one of those ones that it's all camp, absolutely, but they do delve into some interesting topics, interesting themes, and it's fairly well written from a character perspective. It's one of those ones that is better than it looks.
John, Yield Geek, have you ever seen a British fantasy film, very low budget, called Avalon?
No. This is where I admit to Matt Manfred's comment as well. I'm actually completely lost in this conversation because
he doesn't watch movies.
I don't watch very many films. I am not a film buff at all.
Barbarella, that was.
I'm quite sad about that. Really, I just don't have the focus to sit and watch a film very often. I think some of it came down to is a lot of the movies we're talking about came on TV on like Saturday afternoon matinees. It was they would with the commercials in there, so they cut out all of the dirty bits, and it was hilariously bad. And you're like, I gotta watch this again.
So HBO got the nickname. What was it? It was HBO is, hey, Beastmaster's on, because they played Beastmaster so much they named it that. They nicknamed HBO, hey, Beastmaster's on, because they played the crap out of that movie. I worked in a video store in the 80s and in the 90s, so I've probably watched thousands of films at this point, because every night I'd bring home 2-3 films, and while I was at work I'd throw on 2 or 3 films. So I'm kind of like, it's not that I'm a buff, it's just that I'm completely immersed into it, but I picked my genres, and my genres were like horror, fantasy, sci-fi, stuff like that, stuff that was entertaining. And I never failed to find seeds for adventures or ideas for games in those movies. And the best part was the more obscure and usually Italian the fantasy film was, or the sci-fi film was that I was borrowing from, the less likely it was my players had ever seen it. So they wouldn't be, hey, you took that from, and they went with it and they had fun.
I'm going to mention something, which is I need to watch some of them because I know they're hilariously bad and they're over the top. Is some of the Bollywood fantasy films when they go off into, where the guy, if you ever want to play a game of Exalted, that's what you should be watching, I think. It's just some of those where he's like, I'm going to do this. He gets like the shield and they shoot him off a catapult and he goes into the opposing army.
When I was in Vancouver in the 90s, 95, there was a Punjabi theater called The Raj, and they played all the Bollywood films. And one night my friend took me, and, sorry for anyone who's sensitive, we got high as fuck because it's Vancouver. And we went to see this Bollywood fantasy movie about the gods fighting each other and all this kind of stuff. And the thing that I will never forget was like the one guy's in his chariot going, oh, and the other guy shoots an arrow at him, and then they cut to a shot of like 500 arrows flying at him.
Yeah.
And then somebody's got 7 arrows in him. He's like, oh, and I'm like, it just went on for 5 minutes, and I'm like, what the fuck? And there's no English. It's all in like there's Punjabi subtitles and Hindu soundtrack. And I don't know what the fuck's going on, but I'm just like, oh my god, this is what? Like, I blew my mind, man.
That's just what came out with the the whole thing with. I used to watch some of the Japanese horror films they had, and it's so funny because everyone talks about, oh well, they don't have firearms. Did you ever watch Akira Kurosawa? He had firearms all the time with his samurai.
Mhm.
So you don't read much either. So Geek, you don't read much. You don't watch movies. You watch TV. Like what are your media? So you don't media at all.
Not really all that much. No. When I come up with ideas, I've just got my odd thoughts to go on, and the fact that I have very lurid dreams that sometimes linger.
I definitely don't want to play Call of Cthulhu with you now.
Actually,
I do not ever want to play Call of Cthulhu with you now.
I'm going to ask you a quick question, John. Do you do audiobooks?
Yes. I've started doing audiobooks recently because I can concentrate on those.
Okay.
If I read a book, I have to have complete silence.
Okay.
And that's not been possible since pretty much since I started living in the shared house when I started work.
Once you decide to have kids, there's no silence ever until they leave. Yeah.
When I finished university, before I got a job, I was mostly alone in a shared house because my 2 housemates worked security, and they were out most evenings. And I devoured a load of books then because I was alone in the house. There was no interruptions. There was no internet in those days. This was 92, 93, 94. I devoured tons of books then because it was silent. The house was silent.
I don't know if you guys will be able to see this on the phone. This is the audio book I sometimes put on to go to
Winter
sleep.
King?
Yeah, the Winter King. Bernard Cromwell, his first book of this Warlord trilogy, this King Arthur story. The narrator is amazing, and because I can't listen, I can't do audiobooks. They put me to sleep, so I'll just put it on at night and then fall asleep and then wake up maybe in the middle of the night and be like, I don't know where I'm in the story, but I'll go back to sleep. Great dreams.
So for me, I usually listen to audiobooks. It's hard for me just to sit there. If I'm driving, that's when I can really do audiobooks.
I do. Yeah, I do a lot while I'm driving. Yeah.
And the problem is how often I drive is I used to drive more than I do now, though I probably should do some of them. But I will say this much: as the Audible book for Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained, that guy does a great job because I had problems trying to read it because it's not in standard English; it's phonetic English, and you're like, oh, but the way he reads, I'm like, oh, this is great. So I'm only about an hour and a half in there, but fantastic book for that.
That's the same thing for me in Shakespeare. When I read iambic pentameter, I'm lost. I'm like, what? And I got to read it because I'm dyslexic, so it really fucks with me. But when I hear Shakespeare, get it right away. Like I just,
especially if the speaker is saying it correctly, not reading it line by line.
Exactly.
Well, there we go. Grumpy Old Slam, Tremors. Yes, I will admit that's probably a good guilty pleasure, especially when they have Bert
Gummer.
One bad film I have seen is Anaconda.
Oh, awful. Awful.
No wonder you haven't gone back to see movies. Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
what's his name? Angelina Jolie's father. What's his name? He's in that.
John Voight.
John Voight.
John Voight. He's so bad in that movie. Like, and you can see he thinks he's being like the best. He's like, you can tell he's throwing himself into this character, but it's just like, oh, buddy, no, this was a bad choice all around.
I am Crazy Hunter, and you will be eaten by Anaconda.
It's like, where's this accent? Is this South American? Is this Eastern European? What are you doing? What are you doing, John?
There's so many bad films out there. I'm trying to think of. I'll tell you one I kind of enjoy was the Hellboy, the second one. I liked some of that with the Well, I liked it because they had the fairies and things like that coming in and fighting. I said, man, this would be great for the I want to say like your World of Darkness kind of thing going on.
Well, it's like Pan's Labyrinth. When that came out, everybody was like, "Oh, go see Pan's Labyrinth." I went to see it, and they were like, "What do you think?" But I said, "Well, I was never a teenage girl who wished she was a princess and got kidnapped by fairies. So literally, the only character I could relate to in this entire film was the stepfather, who's supposed to be the bad guy. But I kind of could relate to him. So the movie didn't do much for me. Sorry.
That movie's top 5 for me. Just
I
so
like
beautifully
Labyrinth.
put together.
Oh, gorgeous, but
Yeah, I mean, especially when he does the monster with the.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean that comes over into the whole thing also of Hellboy, which I think was the second, where he did that, and I said, okay, I like those kinds of monsters because they give you really good visuals for just really creepy things. And
I wish he had done The Hobbit. Like, I really wish Del Toro's Hobbit had happened because I would love to have seen what he would have done with that.
I don't know how I feel. The problem was they tried to make 3 movies out of something that should have been 2.
Yeah, I don't think they would have done that if Del Toro had stood at the helm. I think it still would have only been 1 film. But I think the thing is once they got Peter Jackson back on board, the studio's eyes turned into like Daffy Duck looking at treasure and going.
I think the 3-movie split could have worked too, and because using the extra material from the appendices and stuff like that, and fleshing out even the Hobbit story. The problem was they didn't do it right. They didn't do it well. They got a little too ridiculous. Like especially if you see the extended cuts with the Dwarven war machine, the tank with the repeater crossbow or ballista. I was like, what the hell is this?
Well, I'm sorry. They lost me when they're doing the barrel rolls.
Yeah, and it was stupid. It was absurd, and that was a huge problem. But
they lost me at the dwarf song in Bilbo's house.
Really?
When they started bouncing plates, and I was just
that one. I thought you were talking about the other one.
I was like, what am I watching? Like, how do you go from that deep, dark song of the mountain in this goofy shit in the same sequence? Like, what?
I still love the one that they did for the TV. The TV version, 70. What's that?
Rankin Bass. Is that the Rankin Bass one?
Yeah.
Not me.
Well, that was the one that to me you could have, if you'd made it into a 3-hour movie, that would have worked out perfectly to do the whole thing.
Well, I love Batchke's Lord of the Rings. Like, I love his animated Lord of the Rings so much.
Fire and Ice.
Love Fire and Ice. Fire and Ice is fantastic.
Fire and Ice is one of those that's almost great with that. It just need a little bit more. But Fire and Ice to me is that classic. I just remember being a kid like, there's blood in a cartoon. This is the most awesome movie ever.
Any movie that brings Frazetta's Horsemen to life, I'm in.
When was Fire and Ice released?
80s, late 70s, early 80s.
I think it was like 83 or 84.
I don't know. I was an adult when I saw it, but I was like 19 or something, so that would have been like.
I would say Blood in the cartoon. Have you ever seen the cartoon version of Watership Down?
That movie fucked me up as a kid, man. 83 is Fire and Ice. No, like seriously, we watched Watership Down
with the rabbit.
Yeah, yes. And I can't remember how old I was, like 9 or 10, and I was like, it blew me away. Well, John Hurt does one of the voices in that, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that was a really, really good film as well. That's the thing.
I still like Rats of Nim.
Sorry, you like what?
Rats of
Secret of Nim.
Yeah. Secret of Nim is amazing. I love Secret of Nim.
Yeah, it's we're all going for animated stuff.
Yeah,
I just, but sometimes this is one of the things that's a little bit different, which is they keep on doing everything in live action. Like, I'm happy having some of the cartoons. I still love some of the old anime, not all of it, but the problem is when people say you like anime, like I like some of the anime, which tends to be the popular stuff. And there's a lot of really bad anime out there. But
I'm a guilty pleasure fan of Star Chaser, The Legend of Orin. I just love that movie. It's so cheesy, but I love it.
I want to see, what is it? Lotus War has some of the stuff where they do the elves and things.
Record of Lotus War is one of those things that I wish I could get the rights for just so I could redo the English dub on it with good actors, because the English dub is awful in Record of Lotus War.
Yeah, geez.
But if you like subtitles, you can watch it in Japanese.
I used to do that with Kira, though. Sometimes if you can get good voice actors, good voice actors, I hate
Right.
why would I want to watch subtitles? So like, well, it's not its native language. I said it's all dubbed anyway because it's a cartoon.
Well, it depends. Like if I'm watching a live action film, I want to
Yes.
see it in its original language because I want to hear the actor's tone of voice
Yes,
and watch how they do with their face related to a line, and then know what I'm looking underneath. That's a big thing. In anime, I don't mind watching it with subtitles, but man, like I like sometimes just to throw something on while I'm working on something else,
Sure.
and I can't have subtitles because then I gotta
You gotta watch it. Yeah, as long as the people who did the voiceover are good, they can carry it over. Yeah,
which these days they are. Like these days, the dubbing is amazing. Look at poor John; he's fallen asleep listening to his babble.
I'm going to mention another thing, which is
hijacked his thread.
They're talking movies.
No, wait a minute. If we're going to talk about moves that really frustrate you as a player that the DM does that are completely by the book, how about the old barge tale when you went from one side of the dungeon to the other so you couldn't map it as an
teleportation?
It's like, what the hell?
Well, that falls in the category of adventuring hazard. So that's it's not fun, but it's part of the game. It's not a dick move per se, unless the DM just arbitrarily decides I'm going to do that now. That's a dick move. But if it's baked into the scenario, then
I hated some of that stuff like that.
The other ones is when there's a teleportation portal, but each person who goes through it doesn't teleport them to the same part of the dungeon. They spread the crew party into like 8 corners.
Also,
Lost Cannons of Suchcant does that.
Remember in Bard's Tale, you literally had a spell that you could isolate your position. So if you got teleported, it's like, okay, quick, cast that spell, figure out where we are, and get your bearings. D&D doesn't have that.
You had to do that. Well, the other one was, you're talking about normal things. How can we forget magic resistance on monsters?
That's great.
That's
just part of the game.
No. But what we're saying, but things that really make it hard for players, that's one of them. Is if you're suddenly fighting monsters with high magic resistance.
Well, especially in first ed where it's variable. First level wizard add 50% to the magic resistance of the target.
Or settings that pervert the effects of spells.
Anti-gravity.
If we're going to talk about magical nature, NPCs that behave like their fucking alignment.
Yeah.
Watch as the players get all spare because most players want everybody to love them. But when the lawful evil guy doesn't like them, now he's a prick. He's done nothing to you. He just doesn't like you because you're chaotic and he's lawful.
Yeah. Or even better, good aligned NPCs hate the PCs because reasons.
Well, we want to talk about this because Mage's Musings does this, and this was the thing that we probably did to all bad players, all bad kids. Reaction rolls for those characters with the low charisma.
Yeah. Go ahead, dump stat your charisma. It's not going to serve you.
It's like, wait a minute. You understand charisma is the most powerful stat if you do it right. That was one that got into there. What are some diseases? If you actually look at the first edition and you roll every so often,
we're back on topic after 50 minutes.
Yeah, with 2 minutes left in the stream.
Well, I didn't want to completely derail the topic, but remember disease, and you look on and they have the little disease thing, and it says, you can lose this. We had
a character in one of my games. He had a dwarf with a con of 18, and we rolled at the disease chart because he contracted something, and it was something terminal, fatal, but a constitution of 18 reduces the severity, so it reduces severity from terminal to mild, and we were joking around. It's like, I had that 24-hour cancer. It's gone.
well, there's that one. Using anything from the Wilderness Survival Guide to me is one of those things that when you start looking at,
I use the weather,
and the armor.
That's hot days. They travel no armor because the heat exhaustion gets them real fast.
That to me is but that's probably the reason I left the Wilderness Adventures for that. And none of those are negative. I mean, players can get mad, but you're like, no, it makes sense. They're like,
you telling me you have air-conditioned armor? You telling me that you don't suffer from heat exhaustion when you're overburdened? Yeah, go ahead, argue that one. It's 40 degree and humid. You really want to be encased in metal?
Try hiding from.
You're muted, Bear.
You're muted, Bear.
You really want to be lugging 90 pounds of gear up the side of that hill? Okay, let's do some exhaustion checks.
Try hiding from monsters when you're wearing sweaty leather armor that you've worn every day for 2 weeks out in the tropics, and you've not had a bath in the whole time.
Okay, I'm gonna do this one time, which is why I wear boxers from now on. Is when I had to peel my underwear off, and it took some skin off when I was in Orlando, Florida, at 100 degrees hot, like 98% humidity every day. I was like, never again. So the players are like, look, this is what happens to you too. you have to have real respect for those conquistadors when they're wearing like 3/4 plate armor.
Is that a level of realism you really want to go into in your game? Like roll for heat rash? I mean,
yes. Well, heat rash, no, but heat exhaustion, yes. Like
heat rash, like, your movement's slowed by half because you know.
Well, you know what? All of a sudden, players start wearing that. You know, they wear completely different armor. They start wearing, padded armor or things like that. And
I fuck with them by making them make exhaustion rolls if they sleep in their armor.
Oh, I can say this much: I have slept in body armor, and when you're tired.
When you're tired, you can sleep. But do that 3 nights in a row and see how you feel. You talk to a lot of these guys who've gone LARPing and shit like that, like the SDA, and they've slept in plate mail 3 nights in a row, and they're like, everything hurts and I can barely move. Riding around in that all day on your horse, really? All day you're riding in your horse wearing full plate armor, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing I think. Well, the other part is the. There's a lot of things that get into it which players don't normally deal with. It's like, well, what kind of armor, what magic armor do you want? Armor of cooling, armor of void,
armor of temperature control,
yes,
armor of breathing,
armor of deodorizing.
I have found the magic Old Spice wand.
We're laughing about this, but those are great things to bring up for players, and they're a lot of them. That's part of the reason I love the Wilderness Survival Guide, the Dungeoneer Survival Guide, and I know you talked about pulling stuff off, but man, those, if you actually want to play with that and you put everything in there and you include the fatigue rolls, boy, players are glad to come home. They're glad to do everything. When they get the Lehman's tiny hut like you're talking about.
Yeah.
Hey, let me take off my armor. I can sleep. I can rest. And your follower starts coming in. You're like, I have my masseuse. I have my,
We're my camp followers. If you introduce heat rash rolls, Sean, I guarantee you'll have players Googling when talcum powder was invented. It's like, is it possible that this thing could exist?
Bay leaf. They would use bay leaf.
There we go. You're marinating in it.
Well, I use the weather charts religiously. What I'll do is I'll sit and I'll write a month's worth of weather in advance, and then because it's a quick process, right? Then I know it. Then I'm not coming up with it arbitrarily. When we know what day it is, I look and it's like, oh, it's going to be snowing today. You guys better have brought your blankets or what have you. Or I know what the weather, the temperature is going to be if it's hot. And it works. It's best done in advance rather than doing it on the fly. But it makes for a good game. Then when the druid says, "Oh, I want to cast predict weather," I have an answer for him. I have a legitimate answer that's been laid down, and I'm stuck with it. Right,
gentlemen. I have to hit the little bears room, and then I got to prepare for my live stream in an hour.
Sure.
So thank you again. It's always fun stopping by and shooting the shit with a bunch of grumpy old nerds like me.
We are at pumpkin time anyway, so I'm gonna have to call it anyway. So
peace, love, geek. See you guys on
the
flip side. Bye.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to call it about now because, as always, I have work on a Thursday. It is a shame. I would like to be able to stay up and annoy the wife even more, but it is time for bed. Time for bed. So it just leaves me to say thank you to everybody who joined us on the stream tonight. We've had right to the end. We've had Sean, who has his own channel, Mage's Musings. Do you want to shill it?
Please check me out. I think I'm almost at the 900 mark and ready to announce the next giveaway prize donated by our very own Grumpy Old Slan.
Fantastic. Well done, Slan.
So climbing ever so slowly to that 1,000 mark. But the next video drops at 900, and I'll announce what's coming.
I'm 40 away from 1,500. So if anyone hasn't dropped a subscribe, then please do so, and subscribe to Mage's Musings, and subscribe to Bear's channel as well, the Gen X DM, and also to Elfbait, because we're all one big united team now, and we all like to share the love with all of our friends. Omanal doesn't have a channel; he just joins in everybody else's channel to talk. Can commonly be seen on a lot of channels around the interwebs.
Well, the problem is if I was going to do my own channel, it'd be like gardening. It would be completely like non RPG related.
And we had Saxius and Doof on as well earlier. Neither of whom have channels, but they both run games, lots of games. So, Manfred, you've joined the Discord. Have you joined the Discord tonight? What, is your name on there, Manfred, or have you got a different name?
I'm gonna. Which one other thing? There's Sean needs 2 more to make 900. Come on, people, you can humor him.
I think everybody there is already subscribed.
Yeah, probably.
More than likely.
And that's my friend arriving, so I should tap out now.
All right, see you later, Sean.
Okay. Cheers, Sean.
All right, have a good night, everyone.
All right, cheers. I'm just checking the Discord before I go. Shadow
Did you make sure you link it? Did you make sure you linked it in your?
Manfred is Shadowfax, right? Okay, I can see that now. Right, so welcome to the Discord. If anyone wants to play games, we play games on the Discord. At the moment, I'm running games on a Thursday and a Saturday, and other people have made noises about running games at other times. They're more than welcome to do so. Thursday night at the moment is Call of Cthulhu night, and Saturday alternates between OSE and MERP. Our OSE game starts at 2 o'clock UK time, which is early in the morning if you're in America. And that's usually either Gene or Gingerbeard running the first session, with me running the second session starting at about 7 o'clock in the evening. So we have 2 sessions going there. There's still chance to drop into the Call of Cthulhu game because there's plenty of it. They're still in London in the Horror on the Orient Express prequel. So we can easily throw in a new character in there if anyone wishes to join. But anyhow, I will. Cheers, Omanal. Cheers.
Well, no,
I've just seen your recommendation.
Well, no, I do. But did you throw in your Discord link in here?
I haven't thrown the Discord link in yet, but it's
okay.
I went through a load of my previous videos the other day, making sure the link was in as many as I could find. If there's any I've missed out, then fair enough. I haven't put it in this one yet because I'm terribly badly organized. And I am in the process of writing my own Call of Cthulhu adventure at the moment, which has had 1 playtest run through, and I'm planning on running it again in the near future. The schedule's in the events section, should be top left, certainly top left for me. And this is a Call of Cthulhu scenario that has entirely come from the depths of my twisted mind. So I'd like to write a few of them, actually. I'd like the feedback has been positive so far. I just need to get it going a bit quicker to begin with. The basic feedback I got was if it was a campaign adventure, having a really slow boil at the start is absolutely fine. But we played it as a one shot, and the slow burn was 2.5 hours, and then it went mad for about an hour at the end. And I need to add a bit more action at the start.
John, I'm not sure that we've ever done one shot. So it seems to be 3 shots acting as 1 shot.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no worries. Anyway, I have got to go. I'm going to go to bed. So, cheers, Omanal. Thanks for joining in, and thanks everybody in chat. Thank you, everybody in chat who's joined in. If you've got a channel, you're welcome to shill it in my chat. I know Crafting Gamer's been in chat. He's got a channel. I can't remember any others. I apologize. I do apologize. But cheers all. I'm going to head off. Good night.